welcome everybody to the first episode ever of Seahawks Brady Bunch. It's actually only four of us here, but here's the story, I guess you might say, of four Seahawks content creators, writers, bloggers, podcasters, all coming together through friendship and collaboration to talk Hawks the final Wednesday of every month. I'm Dan from Seahawks Forever. That's Mookie, managing editor of Field Goals over there. Below me on the Hollywood Squares is Brandon Kane of the Hawks Nest, and then Bryce Coots of the Hawks Eye podcast. Be sure to get over and subscribe to his new show over there. We have a lot to talk about, guys. How's it going?
Much better than the Rams right now, huh?
I was waiting for somebody to say something about the Rams.
Well, we just came back from our latest job. That's why I got the sunglasses on. So I'm gonna have to switch to my normal glasses very soon.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. So we took care of business, and now we're gonna talk Hawks. You get it? Capiche?
For those who don't know what we're talking about, this is the visual that we're talking about here. It's pretty happy with how this turned out. I've never looked so hard in my life.
I know. You just got back from a hit, man. You just whacked the guy.
I think we determined yesterday, because somebody pointed out that you and I, Brandon, looked a little more weathered, and it's because we've done more killing.
Well, yeah, and that's it. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to do that. It's not age. It's the killings. That's the reasons.
All right, let's get into this, you guys. Obviously, the big news yesterday at 1 o'clock, teams had to be down to their 53-man roster, at least for the moment. We like to try to frame it as final rosters, but there's a lot of movement, including today, that we'll get to as well. Let me just put this up on the screen. This is, I believe, as up-to-date as it can be, of the moves that have been made, including today's, that I've kept track of. But I've included a couple of things in here. Chaz Surratt, who the Seahawks signed today, I've got in here at inside linebacker. There hasn't been a corresponding move to that one yet. We did get a corresponding move to the Darian Kendrick signing. Shaquille Griffin off the roster, at least for now, although John Schneider just moments ago told us that he'll stick around. Let's just do this, you guys. Let's go clockwise. Mookie, we'll start with you. General thoughts about the construction of the roster as we know it today.
I don't think there were too many surprises with the roster cuts specifically. I'd say that the ones that were the most surprising on the surface were Brandon Peely and Patrick O'Connell. And it's really just for depth reasons, because at the time, and actually even still, they don't have a true nose on the roster. And they've got 3 on the practice squad right now, or 4 maybe. And then you've got Patrick O'Connell looking like one of the preseason standouts. And he's been here before. He's been with the team since Pete was still the coach, and he's not been able to make the 53 on any of those instances. But inside linebacker depth has been a concern. They had the initial 53 with only 3 true inside linebackers. And now they're going to add Chaz Surratt, we assume, because that's been, I think, confirmed by Surratt's agency. So it's probably going to be a transaction you see tomorrow instead of today. Yeah. And the question mark will be the question mark is who goes to make room for Surratt, because I'd say the biggest inclusion in this roster, was Nick Callerup, the undrafted rookie tight end, because you think, with 3 tight ends in Arroyo, Barner, and Sawbirds, and then Brady Russell is fullback tight end hybrid. Do you really need what is essentially a 5th tight end? And I'm assuming that Callerup impressed them enough that they didn't want to risk losing him to waivers. Keeping in mind, we only had 29 claimed off of waivers today. But I think that as good as it must feel for Callerup to make the roster, if they make any more transactions this week, Callerup could end up being one of the obvious releases. And the same might even apply to Connor O'Toole. But my caveat with O'Toole is we do not know Chenna Nwosu's status for week 1. So it's possible they might keep him on the active roster. But all things considered, I think that this roster is generally what we expect to know. No huge jaw-dropping moments or anything, especially with how many people they ended up retaining on the practice squad to begin with. So it's just kind of like rearranging the deck chairs, sort of.
Bryce, I know you were happy because you were on O'Toole the whole preseason. You brought him up to me in private conversation even before I kind of thought I saw much out of him. So you must have been stoked.
Yeah, no, honestly, when Connor O'Toole made it through to the 53, I was shocked because I thought he had done enough to earn potentially being a late cut or a practice squad guy when I saw him make the initial 53, I kind of went, yeah, especially as the preseason wore on, he started to become more impactful, especially with freshman quarterback. And so for me, it was like one of those cool moments to see a guy like Jared Ivey make the team. We haven't really seen a lot of UDFAs in the past, like, since I don't know, maybe the last couple of years, 4 years, where Seattle's actually had UDFAs to be worthy of making the 53-man roster, not just the practice squad. And so for me, that was really exciting and cool. I'm still kind of wondering if you talk to the guy with the practice squad now that the initial wave of cuts happened and they have to add some guys. It sounds like Chris Paul Jr., the linebacker, is someone that's supposedly added to the roster, or maybe we don't know if it's practice squad or the actual 53. So there's going to be some maneuvering still. But for me, the one thing I think that stands out about this roster construction, and I'll get your guys' take on this finally starts to feel like a Mike McDonald style of roster construction, more so than we saw last year, which was like that carryover from the Pete era. You're seeing a little bit more of him really, take guys and take chances on guys like an O'Toole and a Jared Ivey. So it'll be interesting. I will say, though, the thing that still concerns me a little bit is the fact that our two backup guards are rookies. And don't get me wrong, I like Bryce Cable a lot. I like Mason Richmond, but Haynes being on IR, and now basically if Bradford, who has had an injury history, goes down, kind of still concerning a little bit that those guys are the only two that are kind of left there.
Yeah, that's a big one. Brandon, your thoughts on that offensive line room as it sits today? Because outside of the first five, which we like what we saw from them, like it's awfully, awfully young.
Yeah, I think you got to, especially looking at Dalton Risner now going and departing and not landing here. So that sort of safe option you thought you have is now also off the table, and you're left back looking with, like we were last year, saying, well, what we've got is what we got, and hopefully we're all we got, because hopefully we're all we need, but maybe we're going to need more, and maybe we don't have more to go get. So this is a little bit of one where, look, we've been down this road in over the last 10 years many times, the offensive line, and that you feel worried about it coming into the season, and those fears are then confirmed. I don't know that that's going to happen exactly as much this year, because there's some things that they've done to actually resolve it. I think at times you've had talent discrepancies and problems there, and then you've had bad coaching and bad scheme and bad play calling. And so it just one thing after another starts to compound it and make it look even worse than maybe it is. And that's a lot what the front office, of course, has told us throughout this offseason and their outlook of it. But it's worrisome. I think as well with Mookie said with Cal Rupp and O'Toole, those are to me, the moving parts of this roster right now that are the ones you're going to probably move in and out, these guys that you're kind of adding in. They seem like the ones that are the most straightforward. I just can't think who's grabbing Cal Rupp. I mean, what's the team that's going up there and putting him onto their active roster?
Yeah, a block first guy that wasn't drafted. That was a head scratcher to me, but I think you guys have all touched on it. It feels like, and it felt like this yesterday at 1:00, that whatever moves we were going to see over the next couple of days, that Cal Rupp and O'Toole would be the first to go. Dude, how are you guys going to feel if we are sitting there on Sunday the 7th against the 49ers and they haven't added a veteran on that offensive line that can play interior offensive line? Does that have to happen, do you think, over the next 4 or 5 days?
I don't.
I don't think it does.
Like they have time to sign people, but the thing with this offensive line, as you noted, the guard situation, Cable and Richmond are presumably backups, but if something happens to Bradford or something happens to Zabel, you do wonder, would they move Sundell to one of the guard spots and just have Oluwatimi play center? Because Oluwatimi not winning the starting job is not because he performed badly. It's just that he seemingly got Wally pipped, and Sundell took advantage of his opportunities when Sundell was injured. So those are options as well. But I definitely agree that the guard situation is not ideal. Lomea getting cut was not a surprise to any of us, the way he looked in preseason. But Cable and Richmond weren't exactly lighting the world on fire in preseason either. So they may still be looking for a veteran option, or we discussed it, or you might have brought it up, Dan, Shane Lemieux from the New Orleans Saints. And I know he wasn't, again, not a starting level player with the Giants, and then he was an emergency with the Saints. But whoever you sign is not going to be a surefire starter. You just want somebody who is a good enough backup. And Lemieux would be one of those options. And familiar with the Jets. Put him a little bit closer to some of the backups in the way that the Seahawks supposedly had interest in Dalton Risner based on the Bengals. Risner had asked guys to Kubiak. when he was there in 2022. So, everybody else is still fiddling with their rosters over these next couple of days. So you might be surprised as to who is and isn't available and who could end up being picked up.
Yeah, and the Lemieux thing was simply because of familiarity and scheme fit. I thought the Reisner thing would have made sense, but obviously I think he probably sees a clearer path to starting in Cincinnati. They're just as interior offensive line challenged as we are. And I guess there has been, and I'm sure you guys have gotten some of this blowback too, a lot of concern among the fan base because, as we said, we like what we've seen from the starting five, right? But Bradford's missed, I think, 9 games over the last 2 years. He's never put a 17-game schedule together. And, Cable Dew had his struggles in camp. There were good moments, but there were bad moments too. LeMaya gets back on the practice squad, but he really seemed to regress this year and take a step back. I don't know what's going on with him. In searching for positives here, and we can talk about, Michael Jarrell being traded as well, the fact that all 3 of the offensive linemen, of course, Gray Zabel wasn't going to go anywhere, but that were drafted this year, the new guys, the guys that John Benton, Rick Dennison, Justin Outen, that had input into their selection, does it make you feel a little bit better that those guys they pounded the table for, they felt worthy of putting on the roster as well?
I do. I absolutely.
Yep. Go ahead, Brian.
I think that this is, you have them handpicking the guys they know are going to act exactly fit to a very precise style of scheme that has a certain kind of requirements of offensive linemen. That just emboldens you. And then you look at the work that they put in with the Saints last year, which wasn't only getting the frontline guys to perform at a high level, but was also getting them the backups to come in there and play like their career best, depending on where their career had been on their trek. I think that just speaks to, again, back to that confidence that this coaching staff and front office have, that they can tap into these players and the talent they have. And it's not about, I need more talent now. It's more about, get us our right guys that fit to what we want, and we'll make it work.
Feels like there's more versatility this year too. And I think that afforded them the luxury of going with 9 instead of last year. They kept 11 on the opening 53. I looked back at last year's Saints team and they opened up the season with 8 offensive linemen, but it's because all of their reserves could play multiple positions. And I do think that it's gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit because we saw Josh Jones have to play left tackle in the preseason with Charles Cross out. We didn't see him play guard, but he has that experience. Bryce, do you think if Bradford should go down, or heaven forbid Gray should go down at left guard, is Jones probably the first guy up?
Yeah, I would assume Jones is your first kind of rotational guy in there just due to experience, right? Like we're talking about that first couple games, like say Bradford were to get injured in the first 2-3 weeks of the season, those are 2 D lines, like, 49ers game, if something were to happen, and we saw it happen last year with George Fant in that Denver game, he went down early in that, or if you lose someone in that Pittsburgh game, those are 2 pretty good defensive lines, and throwing rookies out there with in some respects, like I know Jalen Sundell was on the roster last year, and we all expect him to kind of be the starting center, but he hasn't had a lot of game action as a center in the NFL besides the couple preseason starts and the one, half he finished against Green Bay. So your interior is very young and very inexperienced, Bradford being the key guy. So if you were to lose Bradford out of that group for an extended period of time, I think Jones is that guy. That's why a guy like Lemieux, to me, out of New Orleans, who got cut, he should be high on Seattle's priority list of going and trying to acquire him just for that veteran depth now that Reisner signed off with the Bengals.
Mookie, you, right before we went live here, you were relating to me an interesting comment from John Schneider just moments ago when he was asked about the release of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who, this didn't come as a shock. I think it's trended this way over the last couple of weeks. We've had discussions about that ever since Torrey Horton made it clear that he's ready to play and contribute as a rookie. But what did Schneider say about the release of MVS that caught your eye?
Yeah, and I will read the quote. This is from Brady Henderson because the Seahawks media site doesn't have the transcript up yet. But he said the receiving core is really strong. We like it, especially the physicality of it. And there's a really nice combo of receivers, uniqueness to all of them. And there's a cool physicality with Bobo and Derek and Cody. And that's really important in this scheme. You have to be able to block. So we like the group. And then he also said, unfortunately, you've got to get down to it at a certain time. It was a very good signing for us at the time. Then we added Torrey Horton in the draft, and he's a guy that can kind of take the top off. So that's kind of MVS's specialty. very similar to Torrey in that regard. So I think it's worth clarifying, even though I wasn't even a fan of the signing at the time, that Lockett had already been cut and DK was traded. Kupp had not signed yet. So that meant that Jake Bobo was wide receiver number 2 for a very, very brief moment in time. So you signed Valdez-Scantling for what, $4 million guaranteed or $3 million guaranteed on a $4 million deal. And then you sign Kupp. And then that moves MVS down the roster a little bit more. You draft Torrey Horton in the 5th round, and you think, okay, MVS is still fine because it's a 5th round receiver. And then Horton impresses so well in training camp that he starts taking first team reps with the offense in camp, and then even a little bit in preseason. And then you start to wonder, is Valdez-Scantling's spot on the roster in jeopardy? And it's not because he is a worse receiver than Cody White or Derek Young. I mean, that's not true, because Valdez-Scantling has had some level of productivity in the NFL. But what's going against him, one, he doesn't play any special teams, like none. No gunner, no returner, nothing. And the other bit, and Schneider pretty much touched upon this, is he is kind of a redundant skill set with Horton, and he's much older than Horton, and he's more expensive. So my thing with Valdez-Scantling, and I wrote this yesterday after the roster news was released, that Ted Ginn had a pretty productive career in the NFL over a decade in the league, but he was a high first-round pick. But we know Ted Ginn's story. Really fast, notoriously inconsistent hands. He was the number 1 receiver on Carolina's Super Bowl roster, or the team that went to the Super Bowl in 2015. And we know that Ginn was not the best at catching passes, but he was also a prolific returner in his early days in the NFL when he was with the Miami Dolphins. So if Valdez-Scantling is a worse version of Ted Ginn, he's taller, he's bigger, but he's worse than that, and he doesn't do any special teams. Do you really want to invest in Valdez-Scantling because he's a veteran, or do you want to bet on the upside of Torrey Horton as somebody who can immediately come in and be more productive more productive than MVS in that wide receiver 3 role?
It's an interesting comment from Frank Pepe. But 2 minutes before that, Greg Bell asked him directly if Torrey Horton had any impact on the MVS release, and Schneider said, no, I was watching during that part. It was a very short answer from Schneider. He literally just said no. But GM's
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I think Mookie's on it with this one. He absolutely, that if Torrey hadn't had his ascent, the pecking order Mookie just broke down is exactly what would have taken an effect, and he would have been in a Horton spot as far as that pecking order. And then you would have still had Bobo and Cody White to be special teams kind of ace binds. But the fact he doesn't do it's a big deal, because you're thinking you're going to need to call upon this across the board. Because how can they not right now look a little bit at their punt return and kick return going, we got to be careful here. There's some worrying signs here in the preseason of what we've seen from those units so far.
It looks like go ahead, Bryce.
Well, I was just going to say that the thing for me with the MVS signing, when it even initially happened, I never looked at MVS as a lock to make this team, because I looked at it as what they've done in the past with John Schneider when he had Pete, was we got to hedge against the draft not falling our way. So we need to go get receiver help to make sure that we're covered in case Torrey Horton doesn't fall to us. And lo and behold, Torrey Horton falls. Seattle's able to get a key receiver that's able to ascend. And like Brandon and me, when we were on the burn, they're standing there. It was like, Torrey Horton is clearly a better player than MVS right now. I would say he is. Like, nothing against MVS, but Torrey Horton is a better route runner. He has the same level of speed, and he can do some other things on special teams. And so when you can now hedge against that with, hey, we took MVS, we didn't pay him a whole heck of a lot. I know everyone was freaking out when it's, we have $3 million in dead cap. This team isn't up against the cap like it's been in the past. It's not that big of a deal. It was a smart play by Schneider. You're basically kind of putting two hands in two different cookie jars and hoping it works out. And it did in this case with Torrey Horton and the rest of the receiving core, I think.
It's kind of like, isn't it like what they did with Nick Harris last year a little bit? Don't you see it that same way?
Yeah. I was going to say, like, nobody had an issue when we released Diggs and Jamal Adams and had $20 million in dead cap, right? I mean, it's just the cost of doing business. It doesn't mean it was a bad move at the time. I know, Mookie, you said you didn't like it. I thought it just – I think I was kind of indifferent to it. It just felt like a move that needed to be made just to kind of assure yourself. And it's not just that you can't predict how the draft's going to go, but also that everything else, all the other dominoes would fall in a positive way, that we would get the best versions we've ever seen out of Derek Young and Cody White. I think we can sit here today, guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Bryce, we'll start with you with your coaching eye. Is this because for years, one of the storylines with this team, every time we got to roster cut down, was who's wide receiver 3? Who's our third wide receiver? We don't have a third guy. This might be the deepest, most talented young receiver group I can recall.
Yeah, I would say it is. I think there's still, Cody White, Derek Young, that back end there. I think, the top half of it for sure, the top 3. But the thing I think you got to look at with this year's group is I don't know what that third receiver's numbers are going to look like, and if it is actually truly a receiver that's really going to be the third weapon in this passing game this year. I think AJ Barner and Arroyo and Saubert and even Robbie Oots are going to have factors in that. With the style of offense we're playing, there's not going to be a lot of 11 personnel looks out there like we've seen in the past, or even, 10 personnel looks where we've got more receivers out on the field than anything and no tight ends. Like, there's going to be a lot of 21, a lot of 12, a lot of 13. It's going to be those kind of sets. So now your tight ends are eating into that third receiver that we've been so accustomed here for the last 3 years or so to have. I agree with you, Dan. It's a very talented group. I don't know how accomplished it is yet, though, because Jake Bobo's never really had a big role. Derek Young and Cody White really haven't ever had big roles. Really, you're banking on Cooper Kupp and JSN here, and Torrey Horton to take a step as a rookie. That isn't exactly always the easiest thing to do once the regular season hits.
Meanwhile, MVS ends up in San Francisco. I predicted that yesterday. I mentioned it on my show. It just made too much sense. I mean, they're desperate for wide receiver help there, and they're some teams. The Seahawks used to do this as well. Pete Carroll always seemed to pick up some player that had some connection with the team we were going to play week 1. So, Max Bailey here says, I'm calling MVS drops 2 balls against us week 1. He is our sleeper agent. I love that. We did have some changes today on the roster, and one that we know of for sure because we got official confirmation. Sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, these guys just can't get into town in time, and so they don't get signed, and we don't get official transactions. But the Darian Kendrick move was interesting. Is it Darian? Okay. Darian, right? Got to learn all these new names. My goodness, this is a tough time of year. ACL in camp, started a bunch of games for the Rams the last 2 years. Tore his ACL in camp last year. Supposedly ready to go full speed now. This is a guy that has an interesting background and doesn't exactly scream Seahawk in a number of ways. He's a 4.8 40 at his pro day guy with a checkered criminal past. This one really caught me off guard. Brandon, your first impressions of this move and kind of where you think he fits.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of he's a cheaper angle, let's say, than Shaq. I think there's the thing with Shaq, as we talked about at the top, where you wait after week 1 where his salary isn't fully guaranteed, and then you can kind of play that game so that it's a game-by-game basis with him throughout the course of the season. They probably like his upside, though, as well, being a bit of a younger player. And with what Shaq, where his floor is. He certainly doesn't have a ceiling beyond it. This guy, you think maybe he's got a little bit more of a higher ceiling, but he was a later round pick. There's not a lot of flash, I would say, or dash to him on that, but they seem to have seen something they like in him from a couple of years ago in that play, and that they feel like he's going to fit to this defense really well. He'll fit as the back end guy on the roster, and we'll see if that's not a position that ends up being one that's in an ever fluctuating state throughout the year, where one guy in, one guy out. I don't know. I didn't elicit much excitement compared to the other guy we got.
Yeah, and they were able to bring Shamar Jean-Charles back to the practice squad. He's a guy that maybe a lot of fans have forgotten about because he got hurt, I think, the first day, literally, of camp. And so he's coming back from an injury, but I know he's a guy they like, and Kubiak has some familiarity. At least got to watch him in New Orleans last year. And then we have Chaz Surratt, super interesting background, former quarterback at North Carolina, converted to linebacker. Mookie, your thoughts on Chaz Surratt? I mean, we all kind of woke up today thinking we need to add to that inside linebacker group. Are you happy with this one?
I guess so. See, when you get to fourth linebacker, you're just going to assume that they're there for special teams and it's break glass in case of emergency. And with Tyrese Knight, it sounds like he's going to practice next week. So the odds are looking favorable for him to play in week 1. But if not, then I assume that Surratt's going to get his playing time. But the first couple of years in the league, he was with Minnesota, exclusively special teams, and then he got waived and then went to the Jets. So special teams again, like 9 snaps in 2023 on defense, and then everything else was special teams. And then in 2024, he got a little bit of playing time, I think, with some injuries the Jets defense was dealing with. So he's got some experience now, NFL experience I think he's predominantly a weak side linebacker guy. But the special teams aspect of it, I think, matters a lot. If you're going to be a linebacker buried on the depth chart, then you better be able to play special teams. So there is no San Francisco, we need intel on the playbook thing going on here when you've been with the team for a month and a half. But yeah, it felt like they had to make a move, any move at linebacker, just to have some depth there. And it's at least relieving to know that Patty O ended up on the practice squad. So they've got it either way. Like if they don't like what Surratt's doing, then they can just elevate O'Connell 3 times or sign him to the active roster. So it's just having another body available so they're not risking it with 3 when one of them is currently dealing with injury.
Now, we may have another move regarding the 53-man roster tomorrow because it was widely reported by a number of sources today that Chris Paul, 5th-round pick of the Rams this year out of Ole Miss, former Jared Ivey teammate, guy that was at the Senior Bowl. I got to see him down there. Reportedly is signing with Seattle, and it was initially reported as a practice squad addition, but then the Seahawks released I've got it here, they released their official practice squad list of 17 players, which I thought was interesting. And so there's some speculation that maybe when Paul gets here tomorrow, he may be signing to the 53-man. Brandon, I always love your deep dives that you do in draft prep. What kind of draft grade did you have on Paul?
I believe that I had a 4th-round grade. I do have my Excel spreadsheet, though, so I can confirm it. But this was a guy that I liked a lot. I will say he was a guy that had a lot of people that were just over the moon with him. And that, no, I had a 3rd-round grade. Goodness, all right. And all the way up to the 3rd round. So I liked him quite a bit. I know that there's some that saw him, even like Brett Coleman was talking about him as a top 32 guy in the draft and the way that he spoke about him. So I liked him, but there are people that absolutely loved him. And this is in Coleman, a guy as you see, as you're showing on the screen here, who actually got to talk to him in person and actually kind of pick his brain, which with inside linebackers, that's kind of important to make sure that they're, they've got the goods when it comes to their ability to be, smart on the field with that awareness and what they're looking at and what they're seeing it true. He's got things that stand out that are absolute about him, which is our instincts. He's got good quickness and speed for the position. Probably can do some Mike and Will stuff between the two, though he did only Mike stuff at Mississippi, but he's got enough. He's fleet of foot enough, maybe missing a little bit of size, maybe missing a little bit of length, some of that you worry about with him as a tackler. But the kid is absolutely a full meal deal player, and that there's not a glaring weakness to his game that he provides. It's good all around and what he provided in college, and that he is a guy in this age where linebackers have gotten lighter and lighter, might be able to get away with being in more of that kind of 220-ish range where it's gone from old school folks. Like, I don't know, Mookie, if you remember these old days. I know me and Bryce maybe on, but 240, 245 Ray,
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like down to just little, like, it's like guys like me, like just 200 and it's going 220. It's like every year it drops another 3 pounds off the inside linebackers. So maybe he can get away with it. I mean, maybe he add another 5 or 10 pounds, but look, here's the bottom line. 3rd round, 1st round, 5th round, where the Rams got him. You just got to steal, and you did it on the backs of the Rams. That's really the bottom line with it, which is just so cool, is that you got a player with true potential, and you took it from the Rams who wanted to keep him. I can attest to this. They wanted him on their practice squad. So you are robbing from them in this way.
Yeah. I think Jack Campbell may be the last guy that we've seen that's come out that kind of looks like that, more of that old school guy, like 245 pounds. Bryce, when you look at this practice squad, is there any disappointments here? Anything you wanted to see that we don't see here?
It's weird for me because I think there's going to be some change to still this practice squad unit.
Sure.
I think a lot of the guys they brought back, you're going to bring back a lot of the guys that were already in your training camp, right? And that they have good views on. I don't know if there's really a disappointment except for maybe the nose tackle. They got J.R. Singleton back. They got Quentin Bohanna back. But again, are you elevating one of those guys 3 times, then bringing them up to your active roster throughout the year? Is it going to be a rotation? That's kind of one of the questions I have. I think the best part that I like is that they got Jacardier right back, because I was worried they would actually potentially lose him because he had played so well in the preseason that some of these more running back needy teams might have taken a gamble on him. But overall, I can't really complain. I think you may see a little bit more shuffling. Maybe some guys I think that could be potentially let go of this if you are signing more guys to the practice squad that just haven't been announced yet, and you got to do some roster shuffle because it sounds like Shaq Griffin may come back in that capacity, or to Brandon's point, he may come back on the active roster after the week 1. I think maybe Amari Kite might be one of the guys, or even Lamea. Like I think my biggest shock is that Lamea is still on the practice squad because he had such a rough preseason. I didn't think they'd actually bring him back. I thought they would probably let him just go out there, and he may not get picked up by anybody. He may just float around for a bit. So I was kind of surprised that they actually did end up bringing Lamea back.
It is interesting how they stuck with their guys. Like there were some guys yesterday that were released that I really liked in the draft process, guys that were scheme fits. Luke Kandra is one guy that comes to mind. I thought that maybe they'd kick the tires on Cole Strange just because of his athletic upside, but they like their guys and they decided to stick with LeMay even though he really struggled this preseason.
You just better run the ball 75% of the time if LeMay is out there. just can't pass.
Yeah, I was happy to see because until they released the official list, there was some uncertainty about Brandon Peely. I know he picked up an injury last week, and he wasn't in some of the reported lists that were out there first. But there was a lot of hand-wringing yesterday about no nose tackles on the official 53. But
I got a question for you guys. I think
there's some good visibility there.
Dan, guys, are we going to see Byron Murphy again stuck at nose tackle hell for the rest of this year? Tell me, assuage my fears on this, gentlemen.
I think – okay, so I'll try and help your fears, Brandon. I think you will see him there at points in certain packages. I get a stronger feeling Jaron Reed's going to play more of that role this year, and I think that was part of their bringing him back into the fold was to take some of that burden away because if you listen to what Byron said in the offseason about all the work he's done on the pass rushing and stuff and the technique side – we've heard Mike McDonald say it. I think they look at, hey, let's flip Jaron and Byron from what they did last year. We had the rookie. We gave him an easier spot, really, in some respects. They probably thought in this defense to play the nose. He's here year 2. Now let's flip this. Let's give Jaron that role, and he can do it. And Jaron can still do that role, I think, in a lot of ways, play that nose tackle. And let's free up Byron. But one of the things that sticks out in my head was Mike McDonald made a comment. I think it might have been after the Raiders game. And someone asked him about how are you using Murphy this year? And he goes, it depends when Leo and Murphy are on the field together versus when D-Law and Murphy are on the field together. So I think that's going to kind of be the thing. I don't think Brandon will see him play as much nose tackle. I still think there'll be some, but I think it'll be maybe in like, hey, we want to get D-Law and Leo on the field at the same time with Murphy. Murphy's going to be that nose tackle in a pass set, kind of like what we used to have when we had Clinton McDonald come on the field in NASCAR packages for that group. That's where I see Byron Murphy playing more nose tackle is probably pass heavy, where I think Jaron Reed will be your rundown nose tackle, unless they bring up a Bohanna or a Peely or J.R. Singleton, one of these guys on active game day. Like that's where I think you'll see it happen this year.
Speaking of nose tackles, Speaking of nose tackles, I don't know if Randy is related to Tony McDaniel, but we can hope, right? He says, thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. In regard to how the process works, if a team cuts a player on Tuesday, any team can sign a player and place on their practice squad? ? Moving forward, a team can snag off practice squad, but said player goes on active roster. Considered the name for the hard way. Interesting. We didn't. Collective just kind of came up while we were at dinner, I think, right? At Aqua. Is that when it came up the first time?
Syndicate.
Well, Collective didn't come up because that's another podcast.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sorry. Oh, Jesus Christ. I just got in a lot of trouble, didn't I?
Wow.
You can thank Ross for that. Our buddy Ross. It's been on my head. Sorry. Syndicates.
The hard way would have gone too many bad ways with it as far as
for the hard way. Yeah, we might have gotten some grief from.
I think so.
Parental guidance.
Dan, are you guys as confident on this with the nose tackle thing? Because I hear what Bryce saying. I think it's right and Jaron. But then the thing I look at it with the practice squad guys you have, do you feel those guys? Let's say Jaron gets a gimp halfway into the year and he's walking. I mean, do you two guys feel like that you're not just going to go right to Byron there as the in case of alarm pull? kind of situation.
Well, I was going to ask it to you guys in a different way. I think there's been so much focus on the nose tackle position here the last couple of years and how there just isn't enough there. And I think we all wanted one out of this last draft, which was a very good defensive tackle draft. And then they ended up going back to Hankins. I look at it from a different standpoint. Forget about the specific, early down kind of run stuff or nose tackle role. As much as we love our defensive line, and it showed up in all those lists in the offseason, right, of like best position groups, I just think the depth as a whole, like our starters are great. But outside of that, I mean, Mike Morris is basically your top reserve, and we still don't know what he is. I look at some of the other teams, even within our own division, and on their second unit, on their depth chart, you look even down in, dare I say, Arizona. I mean, you've got recent draft picks. You've got guys you can rotate, guys of all shapes and sizes that are a little bit more dynamic. We're all stressing out about the nose tackle. I just think as a whole, that group is thin, and I'm concerned if there's any injuries up there.
I don't know if I'm there with that. I think as it all kind of extends out of the nose tackle, if you don't have to play Byron Murphy at nose tackle, now he's your 3-tech, and him and Leonard Williams form what is probably the strongest 3-tech in the league as a combination package. You're still 4 deep at the edge with Uchenna now activated. He's coming back sooner than later onto the active roster. I think there's a lot of teams that struggle to just get 2 guys that they can rely upon on the front side of it. We've been that way here in recent years. I think the problems bear out of the nose tackle because you have to pare down your 3-tech to reinforce your 1-tech. And I just think it's problematic because we have a situation here like this would be like almost to a degree like the Cowboys getting Micah Parsons and keeping him at middle linebacker rather than getting him over to the edge. And then you just play him that way through your first couple of years. And I just wonder if this is the smartest way to be using this guy who John said was the best defensive player in the draft when we took him.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the other thing.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think, to what I said earlier, Jonathan Hankins is kind of the domino that's got to fall here for that to Brandon's point. If Jaron gets a gimp and gets injured, I do have Brandon's fear that if Hankins isn't there, he's now your immediate go-to at the nose tackle, and then you're just kind of not using Byron Murphy to his potential. It is a scary thing. Like, maybe they still add somebody, Brandon. I don't know, but I see your point now to that. Like, if Jaron gets hurt and Hankins ain't here and he's not healthy enough to play, Byron Murphy's probably your next best nose tackle. And then now you're playing like a J.R. Singleton and some rotational snaps, potentially activation on game day to play the other 3-tech role or something.
And as much as I like Singleton, I don't see him as a nose tackle. He's barely 300 pounds. I mean, I like him. I like the camp he had. I'm happy he's back on the practice squad, but I don't know that he's an option. Mookie, if it should come to that, like, are you confident enough if we roll with Bohanna and Peely?
Sell some Bohanna, man.
Yeah, I would rather be focused on Bohanna and Peely developing, and Addicted to Hawks in the comment section that says, I just hope Peely or Bohanna can contribute. Murphy at nose tackle seems like a waste of his development. And if it's predominantly a nose tackle, then I agree. If it's going to be like here and there, then there's nothing wrong with that. I expect him to be moved around a little bit more this year. But what impressed me about Peely is the fact that he is, 335 pounds, but the way that he can just burst through into the backfield. And I know he's going against second and third stringers, but he seems like that big-bodied nose tackle that Mike McDonald had in his Ravens defense, but he hasn't really had yet in his Seahawks defense. So I'm happy that Peely is staying. I don't know whether his chest contusion, it was a chest injury of some sort, McDonald mentioned, and everybody just completely forgot about it, but including me. But I don't know if that had any impact in whether or not he made the team. But I believe that at least one of those two, one of Peely or Bohanna, is going to be on the active roster, either through a game day elevation or just signed to the active roster outright.
And I know you guys, I think we're all cut from the same cloth. You probably all kind of combed the list of 1,200 players who were released around the league looking for potential upgrades. Brandon, was there anyone out there that you saw that appealed to you as a potential nose tackle that you wish they would have brought in?
No, because unfortunately, this is where we run into the league trend of where the game's currently going the past couple of years is a trend, being that teams want to run the ball. Therefore, defenses are now more. If we checked in 5 years ago at this time of year, probably would have been a couple of guys on the market. But this year, with the high propensity of the 12, 13, 21 personnel, with the teams more committed back to running the ball as they're going to continue to do so this upcoming season, defenses are countering it by, if you've got a good one tech, you got a guy that can stop the run, you're holding on to him with two hands. Versus like we see inside linebackers, for instance, where it has become a little more devalued. You can go get a guy like a Chris Paul Jr. just out there on the market on a cut day. And here you go. Or Ernest Jones last year for a 4th round pick. So it is a little bit where positional value does matter and come into play. And this is why when you want to address this or you want to address an offensive line, now is not the hour to be having to do that. You should have probably been doing this months backwards if you were going to do it. And now you're kind of just about stuck with what you got.
We've had a couple of comments along these lines. It's a misprint here, but apparently Hankins was in the building today. That's a good sign. It's miraculous how these older players just tend to heal once preseason's over and training camp's done, right?
Yeah. I can't blame them. Yeah, they've earned it, I suppose. So, especially if you got like a Clowney, like I do the same thing. It's like gun for hire. Okay, I get $5 million. I'm doing training camp for $5 million. Like I'll come in like August 31st. Yeah.
Are you guys shocked, Bryce? Can you believe that Pete didn't claim anyone or sign any former Seahawks to his practice squad?
Not true. He did. Stone Forsythe is a Raider now. So there you go.
That happened right before
Stone
we went live.
Forsythe is a Raider. So we knew Pete had to go get his next version of Walter Jones there.
Stone feet Forsythe.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not overly shocked. It's been really weird the way that I think. Okay, so this is the reason I don't think that occurred, and I think a lot of it has to do with the organizational structure there now with Tom Brady, Spytech being the GM and stuff. I really think Pete doesn't have as much say as he had in Seattle. And I think that's kind of the way of curbing that, kind of go and get everybody that I've had before, like maybe why Tyler didn't end up in Vegas and some of the other guys that we all thought were like, well, yeah, Tyler got cut. He's obviously going to go to Las Vegas. And Gino's really been the only one. I think it's because Gino was much more of a selling piece in that argument, I think, for Pete, because their quarterback situation was so dire. Now, like receiver, I wouldn't say it was a dire. They had, were able to get Besh. They were able to get, Myers was already there. Bowers is there. They had a few options that they could work with. And so I think that's why you haven't necessarily seen that with Pete in Vegas going ex-Seahawk crazy, is because he's not allowed to do that, which probably kills Pete on the inside because he loves his guys. And we saw that when he came back to Seattle, how many guys come up and just how he is. But that's why I think you're not seeing Stone Forsythe really is just kind of a depth piece for them, I think, in a lot of ways.
On the note of Hankins, Lomar Boy's onto something here, isn't he? He because he's still on the PUP list when the cut down date came and went, he's got to miss the first 4 games.
Yeah, Mookie, you're okay. You seem calm about this one. You're even keeled, like it's going to be all right.
Isn't he always?
Absolutely. I mean, but I was going to say, with Pete, don't forget Jamal Adams did sign with the Raiders, and he's made the roster, and he's had the switch. He had the switch to linebacker, which is a thing that he apparently didn't want to do here, but he's doing it in Vegas. But also the context with that is, have you seen the Raiders linebackers? I mean, they were giving Devin White a shot, and Devin White has seen his best years. He declined so fast. So hopefully it works out for Jamal, and that Pete can kind of like wring out the best in Jamal, and that he can stay healthy. But otherwise, yeah, Spytech, first of all, sounds like the equipment or software that Brady and Belichick would use in New England back in the day. But because Pete isn't calling all the shots or calling the majority of the shots, there is no like pseudo GM thing going on. That's part of why it's not the Las Vegas Raider Hawks. It feels like the Titans and the Commanders, those are the two teams that seem to love them some former Seahawks.
He will get around to it too. He's going to get around to it. There'll be a couple of guys on this roster in the next couple of years that are going to be over on the Raiders.
Boye Mafe, you are a Las Vegas Raider.
Reek Woolen, maybe. Reek Woolen on a big contract.
Other side of the ball, good question here from John. So what do you guys think will be the end game for Christian Haynes? He was placed on injured reserve with a designation to return, so he'll have to miss at least 4 games. Will he get another year to figure it out, or is his career in Seattle on its last leg? I think if they were ready to give up on him, they would have released him if they couldn't have traded him, don't you?
Yeah, they could have also just IR it, because McDonald said they don't think his injury is super serious. They could have done what the Patriots did with Jalen Polk, which is you are injured and therefore we're going to put you on IR, no designation to return. Your season's over. They're going to cut Jalen Polk. I mean, as John Gilbert, my field goals deputy editor, noted, Jalen Polk's rookie year and then missing all of his second year means he's had a less productive career as a second-round pick than D. Eskridge. So he doesn't have 100 receiving yards yet.
That's a low bar.
I believe his only touchdown naturally came against Seattle in week 2, but I didn't expect this Huskies trio of receivers to work out the way it has so far, where McMillan has clearly been the best out of the 3, but we'll see with Odunze. But getting with Christian Haynes, it's going to be interesting. After those 4 weeks are up, are they going to ride with 10 offensive linemen, or are they going to stay at 9? Because they got 9 right now by keeping Cable doing Richmond. And the top 7, you assume, are going to be there for as long as they're healthy. So I feel like Haynes is on thin ice, but I don't think they're going to cut him this year. I think next year might be this is your absolute last chance, because Bradford's also going to be a contract year. So absent that, they could be looking at conditional pick territory for next offseason or something. But yeah, it's not great for Haynes that 2 different coaching staffs have kind of come to the same conclusion. And keeping in mind, as I brought up with Bryce on his show on Monday, that the guy ahead of him in the right guard competition, meaning Lomea, or the guy who jumped him, I suppose, also got cut. So he couldn't beat out Bradford, couldn't beat out Lomea, who was a healthy scratch all season as a rookie, up until Bradford got hurt. Maybe Haynes can be tight end number 6. We're going to do, it's possible to do like 17 personnel. Even all the offensive linemen are just tight ends.
He used to do it.
I'll tell you, for week 1 at least, anyway, I sure would feel a whole lot better if Haynes was healthy, backing up both those guard spots.
Here's the thing I'll say on this too, just to kind of add to it, is if you look at who Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb drafted last year on that O-line, like none of them theoretically are on Seattle's active roster. Jarrell's now gone. Haynes is on IR. Lamea is on the practice squad, basically got cut. Like, that is so indicative. And I'll add one more thing to it that was interesting to add, again, in John Schneider's press conference. The term he used when someone asked him about the offensive line, he said it's so much more comforting this year to have a legit scheme. And when John Schneider uses a term like legit scheme, that is John Schneider's way of saying last year was an absolute debacle on what they were doing with the offensive line. So I think that's a pretty damning indication of how he feels about that whole situation last year.
We got a question here about Courtney Jackson, picked up from the Broncos today. Is he a special teaser? That I don't know, but he is a special
teamer. Got to wait till midnight to get the answer to that one.
He's a smaller guy. He's like a 5'10", 175 dude. Runs, he's clocked a sub 4.40. He's a potential kick returner, right? Brandon, did you know anything about Courtney Jackson before it was announced?
Didn't know a lot about him. Saw he had a really good, as a returner, seems to be good at that. This gives them some reinforcement for Horton, who you do have some worries about the injury concerns with that being in college last year, already the ankle right now. If you have him go down, you're going to Bobo. And we saw the Bobo experience with the Packers was, he's a work in progress as a punt returner and maybe a little too fearless for his own good.
I prefer that progress would stop when it comes to Jake Bobo, punt returner. It's like you are there to fair catch the ball and nothing else, unless you got 20 yards in space in front of you. But with Courtney Jackson, I guess sounds like Denver liked him, but they might have wanted him on the practice squad. But they're very deep at receiver this year compared to I think where they were last year. But keep in mind, with all 17 spots going to people on Seattle's preseason roster, we know that's going to be very temporary. Even if Shaq goes to the practice squad tomorrow, you think there's going to be changes over the next few days. And if Pooh Paul and Courtney Jackson are going to the practice squad as originally reported, obviously some dudes, I'm thinking like Anthony Tyus could get a boot because they don't need to keep 3 running backs on the practice squad. So Jackson could be kind of like, there's a holdover because they had to practice today. But the next time that they're practicing, or when Jackson and Paul can fly to Renton or fly to Seattle and then go to Renton, then they'll be on the practice squad. They just got to handle. It's going to be a formality, I think. So special teams, the return thing is going to be interesting because Brandon brought up Horton. I think they might have Horton on punt returns or kick returns, but not both, because part of why I think Cody White made the roster is his return game ability. And George Holani can also return kicks. So I think those could be your top 3 returners in whatever order. Holani, White, and Horton. And Horton is the one with the most risk because he is nominally your wide receiver 3 at this point, but so was Tyler Lockett as a rookie too. And we had no issue with that. And he was electrifying then and productive in both sides as a returner and a receiver. But with Holani, that's your third string running back. Cody White, that's your number 6 receiver at the moment. So when you're looking at the return game, you don't have to invest heavily, but you do have to be a little bit, you do have to be much more effective than LaVisca and D were last season for Seattle.
It'll be interesting to see when some of the lists come out, and they should happen soon, where we'll see rosters ranked in terms of average age around the league. Seahawks have to be near the top of that list as one of the youngest rosters in the league. 12 rookies end up making the initial 53-man roster. 32 of the 53 players are still on their rookie deals. Bryce, is it possible that this roster is too young right now?
I don't know if it's too young. I think you have on that defensive side, you've got enough veteran leadership. And I think in some respects on the offense now, you look at a Cooper Kupp, you've got Charles Cross and Abe Lucas who have been here for a significant amount of time and playing through their deals. I wouldn't consider them, the experience level. Sam Darnold has been through the NFL now for 7 years. Like Drew Lock's been here a while. You're not really that young. You're young at certain spots for sure, and maybe the depth is young. But I look at this team as a whole and I go, you're probably the right age for ascending to being a team that is going to be a perennial playoff and in contention team maybe in another year or two. There's too young where like everybody's in year 1 or year 2 of their deal or year 3, and you've only got a couple guys that are, really up there in the experience bracket. I think Seattle right now has a really good blend of in their prime older players and young guys that are ascending to that point.
Mookie? Or Brandon?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we can't
need
fight
buzzers.
to the death over it because we can't fight to the death over it. We still got other jobs to do. It's so much different when we're doing this remotely versus when we're all together. What we need is some pizza and beer from Fast Fashion Brewery, and we'll all be in our group like we were earlier this month. But
Exactly.
you think about the 2013 Seahawks, and no, this team is highly unlikely to be the 2013 Seahawks or anything close to it. But that Super Bowl season, they cut Antoine Winfield, or Winfield retired, whatever the case. Like Winfield ended up not making the roster, and it sucks for him because Seattle went on to win the Super Bowl. But they didn't have many battle-tested 30-something-year-old vets. This team does have Kupp and Tank Lawrence, so those are two of your veteran leaders. But the 2013 Seahawks, you had a second-year Russ. You had Marshawn as a, quote, veteran, but he'd been in the league since, 2007 or 2008. Your receivers, Percy Harvin been in the league a few years. You had Golden Tate in his third or his fourth year. Sidney Rice, I think, was in his fifth year. So nobody who is like north of 30 have been in the league a decade. So I look at the Green Bay Packers, and I know the Packers haven't been to a conference championship game under this Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love era, but they're probably, again, going to be the youngest team in the league. But they made the playoffs last year. They made the playoffs 2 years before that. And if Jordan Love didn't have the spirit of Brett Favre break into him, maybe they would have knocked off San Francisco in the divisional round. So if they're young and good, that's a lot better than just being young. And I think that the Seahawks have enough young, good players on this team. Now, what we're looking for, and that's what the 2013 Seahawks had, young, great players. And if we can see that from Devin Witherspoon, see that from Byron Murphy, see that from Kenneth Walker, Smith and Jigba, etc., that's where I go, yes, not only are they young, but they're super talented. And these are guys that you want on your contending window for several seasons to come.
Just a couple of things to add on top of that. You, in the last couple of years, guys you've drafted, you have targeted guys that are tremendously young coming out in the draft. There is 23, 24 young, and there's 21 young when you're coming out the draft. And your Charles Crosses and your Kenneth Walkers, and go through a litany of names. And maybe John even did a little bit of this on purpose, because then you look 3 years down the line and you suddenly have got the seasoned vet who's still only in his mid-20s. And right there on the precipice of reaching his prime physical and all that. And that's where you're at really from that benefit part. I think all of the points Mookie just made and Bryce just made here on the leadership, which you got there, that's all part of it. Having a little bit of the older players, but the leaders too of it. Julian Love, Jaron Reed, Lawrence, what Kupp's done on the offense by all accounts and the way that the players talk about him. These aren't just simply veterans here. These are guys that also seemingly have taken on the onus of understanding I've got to lead to help make this team great. I've got to take on supreme ownership in this role and not just do my job, but to be that guy and throw a Chen and Nwosu in there as well. On top of that, I think is a guy that helps in this way. And you get a collective of those guys, they can get these young kids in lockstep, and that's how you can drive a younger roster to better results. And I think it's even as like Mookie said, you look back to that 13, that was even more untested. I think it was the youngest Super Bowl winning roster, I think, in NFL history at the time when they won it. I want to say that Seahawks team. Yeah. And this one feels like it's got even a little bit more than that did as far as guys that have played.
Well, and the thing I like too is that outside of the offensive line, every position group has a veteran. Like they've sprinkled them around, right? So each of the rooms kind of has that leader. And with the young guys in the offensive line, well, the leader's John Benton, right? It's Rick Dennison, and that's where they get that leadership from. So,
and Cross sounds like he's coming forward in that role too. And don't you? We didn't talk about it, but don't you guys feel way more warm and fuzzy? I know some of the worries we have with the nose tackle. The fact that you're willing to move a Jarrell, and how much confidence that then gives you in Abraham Lucas's health, because this has been a very mysterious thing. You know, I feel like we need to have the unsolved mystery guy come out. A Seattle Seahawks team with a right tackle and an injury they won't let you know about.
Right.
And I feel like there's been a little bit of that with Lucas here for like a year and a half, where it's like, what is it? Is it no cartilage? Does he have to go to Sweden? Do I have to go get a German doctor and we have to do it in the middle of the night in a dark alley? What is it going to take? So this to me is kind of a sign that, hey, we've got this thing's good to go. He's ready to roll. And you get Lucas out there, man, that just changes the whole complexion of the offensive line.
I'm with you. He makes up a big part of that identity. And that was my initial thought when the Jarrell news broke yesterday morning was, are we going to see an Abe Lucas extension now? Do they feel that good about him? You know, I had kind of written that off, that he'd be a guy that would probably be allowed to walk. I'm not so sure now. But also, I don't think when you're looking for leadership in that particular position group, like I think Ray Zabel is already positioning himself to be that dude. He just seems to be a guy that just sort of emits an aura that the other guys pick up on. I think he's going to have a lot to say about the personality of that group moving forward.
So I just want to kind of interject here. Brady Henderson just put something out about 45 minutes ago, like a thread of tweets. Because I guess during John Schneider's interview, he got asked about the 2022 class and like starting to sign some of the guys. To Brandon and your point, Dan, about Abe Lucas and an extension. And Brady goes, my read on what Schneider said is I think Seattle's not having done any extensions yet with the 2022 class. Mafe, Lucas, Bryant, even Charles Cross has been a combination of wanting to wait to see how the season goes with some and trying, but not being able to reach deals with others. He goes, Cross is in a different category. He has 2 years left on his deal after the exercised fifth-year option, and Schneider reiterated they don't extend deals with more than 1 year left, but they very much view him as a foundational piece and will look to extend him next year.
So is he implying that maybe they've tried to sign some of these guys to extensions and they can't?
I think that's what's coming out is they tried to, and I think it maybe didn't go the way they want to. And the key thing that I found there most interesting was maybe this changes the tune and we see Abe Lucas get an extension before Charles Cross because of the fact that Schneider said there's theoretically 2 years left on his deal. We will work to extend him next year is what Brady tweeted out.
I think this is absolutely where this is going at, because if you think about the players that are at play here for extensions, John comes to the table. What's he going to want? A discount. He's not wanting to go to these guys and pay them the full meal deal. What did Rick Woolen do the day that Sauce Gardner signed his contract? Posted up on Twitter, like all but saying like, all right, where's my bag? That should be exactly like this. Do you want to pay him? Do you want to be paying a guy you think you're getting a discount on Sauce Gardner money a year before you feel like you have to pay it? No, you wouldn't. And if Kenneth Walker, I know the running back market's been one that's been lowered down a little bit, but it's also in recent years with some of the deals handed out to the Packers and Jacobs and what you got with Saquon and Swift out there and Pollard last year, some of the other extensions, McCaffrey, price has gone up. And Kenneth Walker's looking at that going, you're trying to get a discount in here. I wait one more year and I pop off for 1,500 yards and I'm going to go get a Jacobs deal out there on the open market, let's say, if you guys aren't going to pay me. So there's just, coming back to Lucas and your guys' point, I'd love your Mookie maybe falls in line in the same place of Lucas is the one you target in on because this is the one that you can actually get the discount for. You say, hey, we're taking that risk on you. You know, you do have the injury history. You're getting a little of that comfort, but we're going to get a decent discount for doing this. So rather than being $20 million a year, if you go out and have a Pro Bowl year, how about we go 3 years, 30? How about we're more in kind of that territory of it?
I do think that fans tend to forget about the fact that there are two sides to a negotiation. We saw some of this yesterday. I had a bunch of people come after me and critical of John Schneider for not getting more for Michael Jarrell in trade. You can only get a player's only worth what someone's willing to pay, right? And in a contract negotiation, because I've heard that too, why can't they sign? Why can't they get Reek signed? Why can't they get Because the player has to want to too. And if I'm Abe Lucas and I'm confident that the knee's healthy, I'm not signing now. I want to put 17 games on tape. And if they're good ones and I'm healthy, I'm going to get a lot more money in 10 months.
Yeah.
It's
Mookie,
kind of
you in the
betting
same
on
place?
yourself.
Are we all in the same place?
Yeah.
Would you do an extension? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would give it a few games with Lucas before I decide to extend him. Like if he starts these first few weeks and he's shaky, even if he's healthy, then you got to have pause. But if he looks like we saw through much of 2022 and we're not seeing him pop up in the injury report, then absolutely, you got to try and bookend your tackles. Now, the one thing about all these extensions with the Seahawks is that focusing only on 2022, not a single one of those players who's extension eligible is likely to be a market resetter. So like Charles Cross, as good as he's been, is not going to, if he gets extended, be commanding a best left tackle in the league or number one highest paid tackle in the league money. We know Lucas won't because he has missed, basically half of his career. You look at Kobe Bryant, I'm not sure they extend him, and especially Eamon Warry being drafted. I think that's kind of one of those things where Kobe, if he gets re-signed, it's going to be a pretty cheap deal. And then Mafe is another one who is closer to getting a potential George Karlaftis type deal, or what's the Bills dude, Greg Rousseau deal, than anything near what Micah Parsons could potentially get, whether from the Cowboys or somebody else. So 2023 is a different story with Witherspoon and Smith and Jigba. But for 2022, I'm fairly confident that they'll be able to get stuff done with the players whom they want to extend. My only question mark is Reek, and that is generally based on how he performs this year. Can he avoid getting benched for disciplinary reasons or tackling reasons again? And if he can be something closer to his 2022 form, just have more ups and fewer glaring downs, then I think that they would try and keep him. But that's acknowledging that they've got Witherspoon to potentially extend.
Now, I suspect Max might be exaggerating a little bit in this comment that I put up on the screen. Hawks playing the long game. We're going to let all of our guys go in free agency, collect those tasty compensation picks. I do think this is a point we're touching on because I have this discussion with people a lot. Hope is not a plan, right? And planning to get comp picks 2 years from now for what happens next offseason is not a great way to manage your roster. The hit rate on back-end third-round picks is not great. You just want to get the best players and you can in your roster. And also you don't get comp picks if you bring anyone in from the outside that qualifies against the equation. So, my philosophy on comp picks has always been if it works out that way, cool, but don't have it be part of your plan.
The other thing if you're going to try to plant the teams that play the compensatory game, the few that are out there, those are perennial winners who have stacked rosters that are losing players on the constant. The other second part of it is salary cap. And those are teams that have a restricted amount of salary cap space. So they have the basically the road painted gold for them to accomplish that. Seattle Seahawks, I believe, are standing with the seventh most amount of cap space as we sit right now, moving into next offseason. And by the way, you have $35 million, which if you don't put to work this year, you will roll then over into next offseason. So even with all the extensions you have to give, you're still in a position to where you're still going to be spending the money one way or the other, which means that the compensatory offset's not there for you to be had next offseason in any way, really.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say too is especially the offensive line, I'm just going to put this in kind of in its own little thing. If this offensive line hits this year and say Sundell, Zabel, Bradford, Lucas, and Cross all play well, and this unit gets back to being average or above average as an NFL offensive line, and we can win games because we have a good offensive line, not great, good. I feel John Schneider would know that he didn't get extensions worked out with those individuals because we don't have necessarily the next guy, to Brandon's point, waiting in the wings, and we can let you walk like a Philadelphia Eagle team can do and be like, yeah, we'll just plug the next guy that we've been grooming for 3 years into the system, and it's just going to keep chugging along the machine that it is. We don't have that. So I look at it and go, I think Abe Lucas is more in line to get what KJ Wright got way back in those early, Seahawks teams with Pete Carroll, where you saw extensions for those guys coming at the end of October, early November. They're in the last year of the deal. They get that extension. Everyone's happy. They get those kind of things because those dissipated later on after the LOB era. You didn't see a lot of those extensions occur like they used to. That's where I see Lucas getting it. You see he's got some longevity. He's past the knee injury. Get him locked up because you have Bradford and Sundell and Zabel for at least 2 more years. And then you work on Cross next offseason. And then you get that solid 5 together going forward. And they're all young players. None of them are almost, 31, 32. Like, you have them in their 20s still and starting to ascend. You can't put this offensive line in particular back into chaos because you let one of them get out the door.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a. Go ahead.
I was about to say one thing about the comp picks, and Seattle finally was getting them again this year. They're not going to get them next year, but what killed Seattle in more recent years was having draft classes that weren't good enough to even merit comp pick worthy contracts in free agency if they let them walk. And then even when they did have guys who were good enough to be re-signed or be signed in free agency, the Seahawks would burn through these bad one-year deals, the Laken Tomlinson type deals, the Ziggy Ansah type deals. So they'd be lighting the comp picks on fire anyway. So this is a situation where the Seahawks shouldn't be worried about comp picks in 2027. I mean, the compensatory fourth could be as good as Charles Cross. No, nobody should think like that. This isn't mad. But the comp pick thing from years past, I think, is a product of the drafts combined with the free agency process. If those things change, then the comp game potentially flips.
All right, let's take a look back a little bit. I think we've gone through the roster changes pretty completely. We got to see Jalen Milroe play a complete game on Saturday, start to finish, albeit in less than ideal conditions. Seahawks ran him out there with a third and in some cases 4th string offensive line against 7 or 8 of the Packers starters. Not exactly apples to apples, but let's go counterclockwise this way. We'll start with you, Brandon. Overall thoughts of what you saw from Milroe on Saturday?
I think Milroe gave us, and what's good is that Saturday gets to combine with everything we got to see, including what we got to see in person. And that I think that I just find myself sort of still standing in the same place I found myself standing ultimately come draft day, which is that not for that bad on Milroe, but that I think that there's a long way to go to get where he's going. He needs the time to get there. I saw even on Twitter today, somebody's like, he needs all these snaps on a field. I disagree. I think he needs 2 years to wait. I think we've got to be patient with this kid as far as the fan base goes. And then there's no guarantees ultimately that he's going to reach that upside. At the end of the day, it was a lotto ticket, and it's a one with a payoff that's as big as any Powerball you can find. But at the end of the day, a lotto ticket is also one that is not as much likely to pay off. The good news being here is that even if he doesn't reach that upside, you still have value you can pull back from this in these kind of sub-package roles that they're going to use him in. And I think that's a kind of a tell in this, that they're reasoning for embracing that right from the jump rather than just saying, no, he sits on the bench for 2 years and we don't touch him. But that they're getting him on the field is a bit of an acknowledgement of the fact that we're going to get some returns off this 3rd round pick. It's not all ride or die on the back of him having to be the QB of the future.
Bryce, the quarterback coach of the group?
I'm kind of in lockstep with Brandon on this, and I've been saying this for a long time since, I started to realize Jalen Milroe was probably going to become more of a realization during that draft process. What he gives you right now is a phenomenal athlete. He's basically a matchup nightmare with his legs right now and what he's able to offer you and the limited passing he's able to offer you in certain sub packages. He is nowhere near being a quarterback that you can send out there and say, cool, you're going to run all 60 plays of our offense, and we're going to put 30 of those pass plays on you to make the right decision every time, go out there and be an effective quarterback, not just an athlete that can throw a football really far. And that's the distinction I think that gets missed. And Brandon, we kind of talked about it on your show when we were talking about Jalen Milroe and have we ever seen a guy go from what he is in college into the NFL and get better and actually fix a lot of those issues during that time they're in the NFL? And I'm sitting there and Brandon put me on the spot and he gives me that question. He goes, you can't pick Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers didn't really change anything. All Aaron Rodgers did was drop his carry point and learn to throw a little bit more out of a different arm slot here and there. That's really what Rodgers did because he was a pure passing talent at University of Cal. The only quarterback comp I can really come up with for what Jalen's trying to do is Josh Allen. And I'm not saying Jalen Milroe is going to turn into being Josh Allen, But when Josh Allen came out of Wyoming to what he is now in the NFL, he has made a meteoric jump because he was a below 50% or around 55 to 50% passer in college at Wyoming. So hold that with a grain of salt. But his delivery and everything was just mechanics were all over the place. He ran a lot in those first couple of years at Buffalo. Now you look at what he's now become with all the work he's put in the offseason and building an offense around his skill set. Now you look at what Josh Allen is. That is a very hard thing to do, and he's the only one you can really kind of pinpoint and go, yeah, it worked for him. So if we're talking about all these other quarterbacks that have come in, like the Tim Tebows and all these guys that have had funky mechanic issues and, you know, Anthony Richardson and all these kind of things, it is a tall task to ask a young man to do that. If you give him the time, which in some respects Josh Allen was afforded even though he was playing because no one expected Buffalo to go in and compete right away, he was able to build it up and get it going. So for me, when I look at Jalen Milroe, I go, if he's able to sit here for 2 years, even 3 years behind Sam Darnold, learn, yes, he's going to play in certain packages. We've heard Mike McDonald even say that, and he can develop in the offseason with his work with his quarterback coaches and stuff like that and get Dallin. He doesn't need live game reps to make that faster. He needs consistency to make it faster of what he's actually understanding and able to process from the information he sees in the film room and then takes out onto the practice field. A lot of what they do and grow is more on practice than it is in the games. And people may not think that's a real thing because, oh, well, you know, it's not live bullets. You're not getting hit. You're not getting this. The adrenaline's not there. Yeah, but if you condition your brain and your subconscious to handle things repetitively in a stressed environment, which practice can be when they do live periods, it will transfer into the game. And that's the thing for Jalen Milroe. The consistency has to transfer. He does some really nice things. He made some really great throws in that Green Bay game. But then you see him one-hop things to the flat where you're like, dude, you got to make that throw. That guy's wide open. We got to have that. And that's where with Jalen Milroe, it's still up and down, where you see a guy like Sam Darnold, he plays no plays in the preseason, does a bootleg to his left side and flips the ball out to Robbie Oots and hit him right in stride wide open. That ball with Jalen Milroe right now, I'm going, is that actually going to hit Robbie Oots correctly, or is Robbie Oots going to have to overextend? Is it going to be in the ground? Those are the areas you need to see Jalen Milroe improve, in my opinion.
Mookie, what'd you think?
Yeah, with Milroe, we have to contextualize that the Packers only played their starters for like one series. Now, when the second series came in, I just went because they cut one of their cornerbacks today who was in the game. They had 4 guys, and mostly in the secondary, who are no longer on the team. But the Seahawks had 8 guys with Milroe who are no longer on the active roster. So it was a little bit lopsided those first couple of quarters. And then in the second half, things even out because the Packers really played out their string. So it was suboptimal conditions for Milroe, but also acknowledge that if the third string defense for the Packers is also playing vanilla stuff, then it's not like they're doing super complicated things. With the quarterback position, just like any other position, we just kind of assume, especially because as fans, we want to see it. We want to see it on our televisions or on our screens, that the reps that you need have to be in live action. But whether it's quarterback or running back or tight end or defensive end, at any position in professional football, you got to get your reps in practice. You got to get your film room stuff down, film study down, to generally, not every coach does this, earn those reps on the field in live game. So with Milroe, I saw some good things. I'm actually more comfortable. I wouldn't say comfortable. I'm more encouraged through this preseason about what he can be as a passer. Now, what I said on Twitter the other day, and I'm still trying to figure out how to noodle it, is that with his speed is tremendous, and we know that he can break out the open field like few others can. But in terms of actually evading pass rushers, I'm not sure that he's got that Lamar Jackson type quality, at least not yet, where he's just not the same. He doesn't have the same shiftiness in the backfield. And I really don't think he would have that against first stringers that some of the other most mobile quarterbacks can. But I'm more concerned about what he can do as a passer than what he can do as a runner. So I love the touchdown drive that he had with Cody White and the throw to Jake Bobo over the middle that set up a 4th and goal at the 4. I thought that was pinpoint accurate throw, great mechanics, just set, read, fire. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some mechanical things that we pointed out, we observed in training camp and in the Lumen Field scrimmage that he still needs to work on, and it's going to take time. I feel like some of the, I don't want to call it impatience, but some of the eagerness to see Milroe in these, not just game reps, but also game reps with ones, is maybe correlated to some fans who do not believe that Darnold is the guy even in 2026. Now, ideally, Darnold is the guy because if he isn't the guy, the Seahawks didn't have a good season and they're missing the playoffs. But to me, if Milroe is 2 years away, that's fine. If he's 3 years away and you're betting on him to be good in his contract year, then things get a little bit dicier. But yes, I do want to see Milroe with better offensive talent around it. And we're going to get to see that in the regular season, presumably, because Mike McDonald pretty much said as such. But there's still a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we are not privy to. Even the beat reporters who cover this team regularly may not always be privy to as far as what Milroe needs to work on. McDonald has given us some tidbits here and there about operational stuff, getting guys lined up, getting out of the huddle. So it's not all about just what happens post-snap. It's what are the things that are happening pre-snap with him that need to be cleaned up so that everything functions more effectively. But we know that with Milroe at the moment, they cannot run the same offense with him, with the first teamers that they can with Darnold and Locke. And it's evident in the way that they call the game for him last Saturday. Much more shotgun heavy. And it's not to say that Milroe can't do under center stuff, but it is something that he's presumably more comfortable with from his time at Alabama. It's one way for him to be the read option threat. It's really hard to do read option from under center. Otherwise, you're just doing bootlegs. But we know that there's still a lot for Milroe to learn and understand and progress. It's not going to be the Russ situation. I think some fans were kind of hoping it would be, but it's just not. Russ was extremely polished as a fifth-year quarterback at Wisconsin in his final year, such that Pete Carroll said right away in May, he's going to be competing for the starting job with Flynn and Tavares Jackson. By training camp, he was getting first-team reps, and then he got actual first-team reps in preseason, and he was named the starter. Matt Flynn and Sam Darnold are not the same because Darnold has a season's worth of good productivity. Matt Flynn had a couple of games that John Schneider gave him a 3-year contract.
One game.
So one game, yeah. Well, he was not bad in that New England start in 2010. Super Bowl champion Matt Flynn, of course. Unfortunately, Matt Flynn gets to say he has a win
on his name.
Yeah, put some respect on Matt Flynn's name. But yes, with the Milroe, I'm still eager to see what he can do in the regular season, even in small, just giving the fans a little like morsels here and there, kind of the little appetizers. And if it goes well, cool. If it doesn't go well, then we know what to expect and to temper expectations heading into next offseason. Like this year, as I told Bryce on Monday, is all about Darnold and Locke. You handle the main portion of the offense. Milroe, develop on just general quarterback things, and then we're really going to ramp this up. Go to quarterback 102 in 2026.
And you can see even some of the under center stuff, he's still uncomfortable with it. There was a snap, he had 3 fumbles in the game. There was a snap that he almost fumbled coming away from center, just had a hard time keeping his hands on it. My thing is, first of all, I commend the Seahawks for having a development plan and putting layers in place to ensure that they're going to stick to that plan. Bringing Drew Lock in, giving him a 2-year deal. So there's just absolutely no pressure or undue expectations placed on Milroe at all to play before he's ready. If more teams would have done something similar to this over the last 10 years, more of these first-round quarterbacks even probably would have had a better chance to make the jump to the league. Also, the Russell Wilson thing, he came from a pro-style background in college, West Coast type stuff, a lot of the same reads and a lot of the same formations and things like that. Under center, absolutely. And I do find it, it's maddening at times, but it's also a little bit baffling. I try to wrap my head around it, but I have a hard time doing it. How everybody just wants everything to happen today, and how if it's less than perfect, it's a failure. And I just think what I saw on Saturday, maybe because my expectations of where I think he should be right now is kind of exactly where he was on Saturday. And I was as hard as anyone on Milroe early in the draft process based on what I saw in Mobile. I think I said something along the lines of he's a project and I want him to be someone else's project. But the progression that we've seen every single day since then, and we all saw it together and getting to see it almost every day in camp, he gets better every single day. And that's all that matters for now. There is absolutely none of us sitting here today in this group or anybody watching or listening to us at the moment can tell us with certainty what kind of quarterback he's going to be in 2 years. We just don't know. You can think you do. It's one thing to say, I think he's going to be the starter. I was on a show a couple weeks ago and somebody asked me who's going to be the starting quarterback in 2027. I think it's going to be Jalen Milroe, but I'm guessing just based on the information that we have at hand And there's other people who literally have said in the last 24 hours he should have been cut and brought back on the practice squad, which wouldn't have happened. But there is more news, and Mookie, you touched on it just a moment. Mike Macdonald spoke yesterday, and it was the first time that we heard him definitively say, or actually it was Tuesday, definitively say, we are running him with the ones in practice. We're working on packages. We're going to use him in the regular season. Brandon, how much do you believe that? How much do you think was kind of subterfuge, him throwing that out there to give the Niners ready, something to game plan for? How much do you really think we're going to see him on the field week 1, and in what capacity?
I think defensive coaches like Mike Macdonald are well acquainted with the fact that they have a very finite amount of time week in and week out to prepare for an opponent, and that every little bit of that is so precious. And if you have to delve some of that away to put it to a particular player or packages, that then takes them away from also being better at the regular stuff you do, say nothing of you being effective at the sub-package stuff. I take them at their word on this, and it makes sense to it. When I look through the league, yeah, we've seen the rushing attacks come forward the last couple of years, but a lot of the best rushing attacks also seem to have that mobile quarterback in tandem, be it Allen with the Buffalo game or Lamar with the Baltimore Ravens. And so you're looking to kind of get a little bit of that flavor specifically out of the read option game. You run Jarcadia right on a 61-yarder in this game, and it was a real, to me, Kubiak special, because you get the pre-snap motion, you get the numbers to one side of the field that are in your favor, but you also have the threat there of Jalen Milroe out of the keeper aspect of it, holding the top side corner, holding the edge over here, and then only further keeping that open hole bigger for then Jarcadia to run through it with a semi-truck and almost house the thing on the call. So it's really a dangerous component when you can bring it into it. You need the quarterback that's the true threat. And when you have a guy like that, that's where you can now, not only do you have the numbers game to one side of the field, but you've almost even created that one extra guy, because that top side corner that's in pre-snap motion on that play prior that gets stuck basically right at the top of the formation, he's just kind of in a holding pattern staring at Jalen prior to the play. That's that 1 second that Jarcadia only needs to get up to 21 miles an hour, and he's by him. And so it's just that this offense is all about just those. It's almost like a blink that you just need it open for. This is, again, why it's not as much on the players going out there and just brute forcing it. It's about, look, we're going to do this tactically, and we're going to open things up with misdirection and just hit him with the crackback block and hit him at this angle, and boom, you're gone if you've got the fast enough back that can hit it. So I think that's where I kind of land on this one.
The last thing I'll say about the Milroe topic here from my point of view, guys, and just you're asking a guy that predominantly has had a changed offensive coordinator his entire time in college. He's never had the same guy every year. We saw what that did at the pro level to Alex Smith. Everyone was ready to write Alex Smith off because every year in San Francisco, he had a new offense he was learning. And as a former quarterback and a guy that coached it, having to learn terminology and change things, and this read now goes here, it's a lot because your habits and your stuff that you've already been pre-programmed with from other things sometimes kicks in. And so with this development of Jalen Milroe, what does excite me is you don't see a lot of the same mistakes multiple times, especially with progressions. It seems like from game 1 versus the Raiders to the Green Bay game, there was progression in his and progress in his ability to go through his reads. He still missed things 100%, and he's going to. But I think the thing with the sub-package thing that we're talking about, and to the point there that you saw of, the question there with what if he throws an interception the first time we put him out there in a sub-package? Okay, he throws an interception the first time he goes out there in a sub-package. Like the team.
What if he throws a touchdown?
What if he throws a touchdown? What if he runs for 1 yard? What if he runs for 61? Like it can't be, that can't be our threshold of, okay, he's now a bad quarterback because he threw a pick on his first sub-package, or he's going to be a struggle and he's not going to be worth it, or so on. Like, he is a rookie. He is learning an offense. He's learning to play quarterback. In college, he didn't necessarily have to be a true quarterback, and I think that gets lost. And Tom Brady's talked about it numerous times on different sports shows now that he's kind of out of the game playing-wise, is the lack of mental development of the quarterback position from high school up is dropped off dramatically. And the problem you're now seeing is you're getting really physically dominating athletes at quarterback that then when the game gets to the NFL, where decision-making and mistakes are like this, windows are this big, that's where you're seeing it come out. So you're asking a guy now at the pro level to learn to be a quarterback and a high-functioning intelligent level quarterback with reads and everything in a faster game, in a smaller window with guys that are all moving at ridiculous speeds and are thinking and moving as fast as that, which causes a lot of problems. So when it comes to sub package thing, I think it's cool. I think it's a great idea. To Brandon's point, it helps your run game because it is that threat, but I want to see this kid develop. I want to see him become a quarterback, not just an athlete that can throw a ball really well.
Yeah, and with Milroe, yeah, the sub packages, and Shane, yes, it's going to be once a month, the last Wednesday of every month. So, yeah, whoever said that in the chat, also 100% on the money. But with Milroe, I think there's got to be a little bit of history here. I think as Seahawks fans, we're not used to this because throughout this entire century, it's been Matt Hasselbeck and Trent Dilfer, but they acquired Hasselbeck and they acquired Dilfer, and then they were kind of alternating starts. And then once Dilfer got hurt, like it was Hasselbeck's, and then other than Dilfer deputizing for Hasselbeck when he was hurt, they kind of never really looked back. And then as Hasselbeck started to age out, they acquired Charlie Whitehurst. Whitehurst was there to compete for the starting job because a guy who's been sitting behind Phillip Rivers for 4 years doesn't need more time to develop. He didn't really develop. Helped us win the NFC West in 2010, but otherwise, he's another guy who just acquired. He's not a draft pick of Seattle. Seattle drafting so few quarterbacks who could be potential franchise quarterbacks over the last 20 some odd years has put us in this weird position because, of course, with Russ, he got the start right away. So that is all that this fan base has known for a really long time. Good chunk of the fan base.
I think all 50 years, Mookie, if you look at tracking it back to even going to the Craig days and then looking at Rick Meyer, who you drafted and immediately started, to your point, I think it's been, maybe this is what the fan base is just kind of used to in that even over generations that's occurred.
Yeah, so with this, it feels a little bit different because some guys bust out of the league quickly like Myra or what's his name, Dan McGuire. And then you've got the Hasselbecks of the world who come from another team and they slowly but surely become better. Hasselbeck had to take his lumps before he developed. He even got briefly benched and then came back. He had a strong finish to 2002, and that was kind of the light bulb moment for him. And it kind of saved Holmgren, too, because he lost the GM job at the same time that year. So with Milroe, different situation. And because of his skill set, they can justify the sub package. If he was a pure pocket passer and not mobile, there is no need to put him in the game for to throw 2 or 3 passes a game. Waste of time. But because we know he is a dual threat and came out of college as a dual threat, and we know that the passing part of his game still needs development, I expect that the sub packages for him are going to be run based. But it's good to me because if the run game is going to be the key for the Seahawks, you got to make defenses respect the read option. I think part of what kind of changed the Seahawks offense toward the end of the Wilson era is teams just stopped respecting that because Wilson either wouldn't keep it or he lost his leg, so they just stopped running it altogether. So with Milroe, you kind of get some of that Russ read option stuff back. Just like, Wilson and Lynch together, they work so well. Lynch got holes because teams had to respect Wilson, and Wilson also had options, big holes and big running games because defenses had to respect Lynch. So with Milroe, you got to watch what happens at the mesh point. All right, do I take Walker? Do I take Milroe? Those are 2 of the fastest dudes on the team. So those things are going to be happening, I'm pretty sure. Not saying it's going to happen 15, 20 times a game. It can happen like 4 or 5 times. Sort of like what Jalen Hurts was doing in his rookie season with the Eagles before they pulled the plug on Wentz. They tried doing it with Trey Lance. And again, Garoppolo got hurt, so Lance had to get thrust into a starting role. I think they even did it with Colin Kaepernick in his second year at least. Running, giving him a few plays here and there. And then once Alex Smith got hurt, the keys went to Kaepernick. So with Milroe, I'm assuming that as long as Darnold is healthy, it's going to be a 90-something% normal offense. But situationally, if it's 3rd down and 1, yeah, you could hand it to Walker. You could hand it to Robbie Oots. But you could also use the Seattle shove, the Pike Place push, whatever you want to call it with Milroe. You could do, the balls at the 5-yard line in the red zone. You could do some QB sweep or classic QB power and run Milroe behind Gray Zabel and behind Charles Cross and let him just carve a path to the end zone for him. So those are the things I'm curious to see. But they would be foolish to not have Milroe throw at all because then teams are going to know as soon as Milroe's in the game, well, it's a run play. So we're going to see, I think if he passes the ball, it's going to be easy reads, easy like 1 read plays. And that is totally
Spider
fine.
White Chew Banana.
Not going to disrupt the offense. Spider. Yes, exactly. John Gruden's favorite play. But
sorry, I had to get that in there.
Always throw it to the fullback. Always.
Yeah, in the flat.
Yes, Milroe to Oots, the Bama to Bama connection.
I got to say this, though, Mookie. We forgot one drafted quarterback that changed the entire trajectory of Seattle's franchise. And that is, I believe
Mike
he
Teal.
was spring ball MVP, Alex Magoo.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, UFL
It's
MVP.
development.
No,
Louis Magoo.
That development
Yeah.
in the
Look
NFL
what he
led to
developed
him being
into.
a UFL star. Yes.
he developed into a UFL wide receiver.
Super Bowl
Yeah,
culture right here.
Ultimately, I think to me the correlation or maybe the analogy, I guess, of the comp is what the last time we really saw a team commit to this and do this with a player successfully was the Pittsburgh Steelers with Cordell Stewart back in 95 and 96. And just going back and looking at it again, year one was very limited. Year two, a lot more usage, almost Taysom Hill type usage. By year three, he was a full-time starting quarterback. Year one, if this is any kind of a template, he only attempted 7 passes, completed 5 of them. He had 15 rushing attempts, and he also caught 14 balls. I forgot they used him that way. And I'm super intrigued by the idea of maybe, bringing Milroe in under center. Maybe he goes in motion. Darnold comes back in. They run him in the little slot there. Really intrigued.
I like the fly sweep option. You have him as receiver, you bring him on the fly sweep, and then he turns into a thrower coming off the other side of the fly sweep. Defense brings down, you have him toss because he's got the arm where he can hit you on any throw. So you can hit deep to the back side of the field or something like that. Bryce, back me up on this one with the excellent. So I think that there's a lot of little just things you can do with him wrinkle wise. You mentioned Cordell. How'd they do that season? Steelers in that first year, just mixing him in. That Steeler team that was not necessarily at that point to the juggernaut. This was before getting to the 95 Super Bowl there with the Niners or whatever. I can tell you, I think they got to the conference championship that year in the first year with him. And then when they did Lamar Jackson like this with Flacco at the end, they as well got themselves into the playoffs and then kind of ran out of gas at that point. But when this has been tried,
11-5,
11-5,
won the division. Yep.
No one's got any tape. No one knows how this is going to look. No one knows how they're going to use them. And so you have an ability here to maybe get it maximally effective in that you're hitting teams kind of like trying to figure it out and what you're doing and how you're going to use them, especially kind of just mixing it in there.
Now, Bryce, the quarterback guy, we're all this conversation about the third string quarterback. What are your expectations from Sam Darnold this year?
Oh, Sam Darnold. I've said this for a while, and I don't think Sam's going to hit what he hit in Minnesota. I just don't, because I don't think the offense is going to be constructed for him to hit a lot of those stats that he hit. However, I think from what I've seen in practice, what I saw in that limited drive that we saw, is I see a guy now from OTAs where we got told by certain people and different people were saying from what they saw at OTAs, oh, he looks like he's going to struggle. He's been struggling, to a guy that was walking into an offense and learning it and learning how to work with these receivers that we had at the time, to a guy that looks like he's in full control of this offense now. Like when I watched him at FanFest, when we watched him in that, drive versus the Chiefs, which they didn't throw the ball much, let's be honest, he got through his reads. The one throw that I really liked was the one he made to AJ Barner, where he takes it out of gun, and you can see his feet and the progression, and it goes, okay, read one's not there, read two's not there, bang, read three, I know where my check down is. He's already aligning and throwing to it. I think it's safe to say that I think Sam Darnold, if Matthew Stafford isn't healthy, and I still expect him to somehow come out with back surgery or get injured, I think there's claim to say that Sam Darnold might be the best quarterback in this division this year. I think you see him throw anywhere between 27 and 30 touchdowns. I see 32 to 3,500 yards and probably anywhere between 65 and 69% completions. And if my quarterback's doing that and we're able to run the ball, I think the Seahawks offense is going to be very successful.
Mookie, let's go with you on this one. How much of a split in carries do you expect to see between a healthy Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet?
Ooh, I think I even answered this question on a fantasy podcast the other week, but I don't remember what I answered then. I think I said something like 65-35 Walker over Charbonnet, but it really is going to be week to week. There might be some matchups where they go, all right, Walker's not got it, we're going to have Charbonnet. So this is like a 1A, 1B thing. I know Brock Huger was talking about on 710, the argument that Charbonnet has kind of earned the RB1 role, and I'm not quite there yet. They both have their strengths. Walker is a bigger home run hitter than Charbonnet, and that sounds cliche, but we've seen Kenneth Walker in his rookie season, and that acceleration, that speed that we saw at Michigan State heading into the NFL. And Charbonnet is not slow, and in fact, he looks quicker this year than I've seen in previous seasons. but he doesn't have that type of burst. But I believe that Walker, if he can read his blocks, because that's going to be key in this Kubiak and Benton scheme, then he could have his best season since his rookie year. And what I'm hoping is that his efficiency is up, his success rate is up, where it's not, okay, he's got 120 yards on the day, but 2 of those runs were 95 yards and the other 14 carries for 25 yards. So that's what I'm hoping to see Walker have 5 yards here, 8 yards here, 14 yards here. It's not, in other words, not home run or strikeout, not that sort of thing. But I lean toward Walker being the predominant ball carrier, and I love that comment. Sharps and K9 a Seattle version, Montgomery and Gibbs. The only thing that I would push back on is I don't think either Charbonnet or Walker is really as good a receiving back as Gibbs. But I can see that. I could see that sort of vision. I think a better comparison would be Bijan Robinson. I think that's how you pronounce his name, and Tyler Algier in Atlanta, where Algier and Charbonnet are the direct comps, and Robinson and Walker are the main guys.
I've heard some John Stewart, D'Angelo Williams too, from kind of their peak years in Carolina. Brandon, I'll let you take this one from Max. This is just a fun kind of off-topic question. Which non-quarterback is the first to throw a touchdown for the Hawks this year? Kubiak does. He does like to dial up some trick plays.
Which non-quarterback, huh? Okay.
It's your boy, Brandon. It's your boy
Jackson
that's going to
Smith.
do it.
Jackson's got a good arm there. He's willing to let it fly. He's got balls.
He's retired, remember?
He did retire.
Is that right?
On that.
But
that's
but
right.
that's exactly why he'll be the one, because you won't see it coming.
Dude,
come out of retirement mid-play.
That's a tough one, man.
I'll give you a dark horse. I was out one of the practices I was at. I think I was on the berm, so I don't know if it was I was with you guys or not. But it was after a running rep, and K9 was in the end zone, and he just casually, you know how guys do, they could throw the ball back in after they take a rep, and he just casually uncorked a 45 yard perfect tight spiral like it was nothing. How about halfback option?
Well, to your point, that was the LaDainian thing for years, and you're going to be running a lot of that outside stuff. Remember, LaDainian would get to the outside, and the defense would collapse, and then he'd just throw it in the back of the end zone over the top on a lot. I think he had like 6-7 touchdowns.
HB toss pass.
Yeah, HB toss pass. I think too, Becca. I think Mookie's right to the distribution on that run to pass. And the thing to remember with Walker is he's just not had the holes at all consistently throughout his career. And the stat I go back to is the first couple of years of his career, and PFF charts this to where in between tackle runs he averaged 3.8 yards per carry. On runs outside the tackle in his first couple of years, averaging 5.1 yards per carry. But then if I was to say he had 65% of his runs going one particular direction, boys, which direction do you think those runs were headed? Inside. So you're running it's going to flip on its head this year, where now you're going to actually run the stuff to what he does best, to where he can flourish. Whereas Carroll was a little bit more wanting to hammer the AB gap, power runs, that type of stuff, which is just not Walker's game.
Can I give you guys I'm going to give you guys another comp for the backfield. I know that we saw Montgomery Gibbs. I'm going to roll it back a little bit to an offense that was similar to this style. Deuce McAllister and Reggie Bush in the Saints.
So would you flip that where Walker is Bush and Charbonnet is McAllister? Yeah, I mean,
correct.
That could kind of be it. And in which case, then Charbonnet could be the one with predominantly carrying the ball. I wouldn't be upset either way if Charbonnet was RB1 nominally or whatever, but we're overthinking this with the non-quarterback, by the way. Torrey Horton, 5 of 6 in college.
That's why I said Brandon's boy. I said
it.
Brandon's boy is going to do it. It's Torrey Horton.
5 of 6 for like $175 in college, right, Mookie?
There you go. That's the kind of research you're going to get from the Seahawks Syndicate here on a week-in, week-out basis. I'll say this about Walker, and it's hard to tell, and I think we're learning more about how much weight to give certain comments from Mike McDonald. I made some of the decisions on my roster projection based on how much he would wax positive about a certain player. A bunch of those guys got cut. He seemed visibly and tangibly frustrated at times when he would have to answer questions about the plan they had for Walker and his load management during practice and things like that. All I know is this: every time he did practice, when I was there, he was the best player on the field. And he seemed like he was comfortable with this scheme, and he was hitting the holes, and he wasn't reversing field and all those things. I I'm almost leaning now to where I think they kind of purposely kept him in bubble wrap and out of view, and they are excited to unleash him week 1. It's kind of where I'm at with that right now.
It'd be dumb not to, right? If you didn't walk into
Mhm.
this year with Kenneth Walker with more an advanced plan than just let's even get through training camp. I mean, he's like gets hurt
Mhm.
every year, but let's just throw him through full load. Just have him. That'd be kind of dumb as a franchise to do that. You want to learn with players as you go along. That's the whole point. They got that sports science and GPS machines. Is there a smarter way we can go with this? They seem like that kind of organization. Whether the choice they make to evolve is the right or perfect one for the future, they're always seemingly trying to kind of, like they say with the chasing the edges, look for those ways they can improve their processes.
I like this. I hadn't seen this before from Jeffrey, but of all the different ways that you can play around with Robbie Use's name, this might be one of the,
You fellas
the
aren't ready
most fun.
for this. You aren't ready for Disco Inferno. Robbie Use. Here we go.
I wasn't. There you go. That's so great. Are we going to get a copyright strike for that?
No, sir.
I
used the YouTube free license on that sucker. I don't have to buy it for my license.
All right, you guys, let's wrap it up with this, and we'll go back around the other way again. Mookie, how do you feel about the matchup week 1? What do you expect?
Well, week 1, of course, is always the craziest. There are 2 weeks. Week 18, the fake week, because you get random performances like Joe Milton looking like a Pro Bowler, and then the Cowboys get tricked into thinking that he's like that all the time. And then week 1, where you get some crazy results where it's not indicative of how the rest of the season goes. But just straight on paper, this is as close as I think the 49ers and Seahawks have been head-to-head in terms of talent. And I say that not that the Seahawks have gotten substantially better, but I think the Niners have gotten a little bit worse. And they have changed a lot on defense. Think about Hargrave going, Malik Collins going. They draft C.J. West and Alfred Collins. But there are changes on that front. Charvarius Ward, gone. Drake Greenlaw, gone. So they're relying on a lot of new faces. As great as Robert Saleh is as a defensive coordinator, this is not the same defense that we've seen in years past. And Hufanga also went to Denver. I know he's been hurt. Malik Mustafa, who was a intriguing pick for them, he's on PU. He's out. Yep. For I think he's on IR designated to return. So this is not the same Niners defense we've seen just run over so many teams and be like a consistent top 10 unit. But as I tweeted a few days ago, it might have even been yesterday. I lose track of the days. When we're doing all this stuff the last couple of days with training camp, with roster cuts and practice squad, you lose track of time. But what's killed the Seahawks against the 49ers the last few years in the trenches, and I specifically cited the running game. Christian McCaffrey by himself has more 10-plus yard runs in these last 3 seasons than the entire Seahawks team. And that's if I included Geno Smith and the 110-yard de-estrogen run, like it's like 14 to 12 or something like that. I take out the non-running backs, and then I add in the other running backs for the Niners and add in the running backs for the Seahawks. 22 explosive runs for the 49ers over these last 3 seasons, 6 for the Seahawks, and only 2 over 20 yards. They have been completely outmatched. They've not been able to run the ball on San Francisco. If that changes this year, I think that is a huge, huge difference in the way that this rivalry has gone. Because even when they beat San Francisco last year, didn't have a particularly effective running game. It was the passing game that was actually efficient outside of one Geno interception that was key to them winning. But the other part of this, of course, is the 49ers offense. I think that Brock Purdy was overrated for a little bit, and now he might be a little bit underrated. He actually had to make some big boy moments last year when guys were out. But what happens if Trent Williams starts to finally look mortal? He's coming off an injury-riddled season, the most injury-riddled of his career. Dominic Pooney might play, but is he going to be 100%? How's McCaffrey going to look? I know they traded for Brian Robinson, and the backfield should be a little bit better there, but the wide receiver position, like you got Ricky Pearsall, and I think he's actually going to be a good player. But they got Seahawks legend MVS on the team, and they've traded for Sky Moore, but DeMarcus Robinson is gone. We don't know Jawan Jennings is going to play. Like what people expected of the Niners at the end of the season, end of last season, and that they'd be whole and that all these changes would make them contenders again. I'm not there yet. With the Rams, it's really just Stafford. The 49ers, it really is both sides of the ball. So much roster turnover that makes this far more intriguing. And I think the Seahawks, if this is as good a chance to make a statement. You want Sam Darnold to become an instant hero, ball out against this team. You want Clint Kubiak and John Benton to be instant heroes, run it down the 49ers' throats. They've been bullied for too long, and it's about time that they start bullying back. Just like in those Harbaugh-Carroll rivalries, Niners run defense seemingly impenetrable. Not when Marshawn and Russ were around. They consistently were able to run the ball in San Francisco. So we'll see what happens week 1, but I think that if they can win in the trenches, as easy analysis as it sounds, if they could do something they haven't done for 3 years, if they've got that vision down, they've got a really good shot to send San Francisco to a loss.
Bryce?
So for me, I kind of got to piggyback off Mookie here. It's all about the trenches. It's been about the trenches for 7 years with the Niners and our inability to be consistently able to take them on and handle them. And it's what doomed us last year in that first game is we got run all over, play action passes to Kittle, and we got killed. And I think the other big factor is how many guys are returning on our defense. Like, they know how to play this. They know how to play Kyle Shanahan. Mike McDonald will have this defense ready to go. For me, when I look at when we've had the most success with 49er teams that have been kind of equal to what our Seahawk team has been, it has been able to control the ball and control the clock of the game and put them in situations to have to go out of what Kyle Shanahan likes to do and take shots, and even Jim Harbaugh, and take more shot plays in those early Pete Carroll years. If we can maintain possession of the ball, Sam doesn't turn it over, we don't have any issues like that, and I think then we're set up for great success to win. But the thing that scares me and continually scares me, I just have this stupid feeling that our special teams is going to bite us in the ass. And there's going to be something that's going to go wrong. They're going to get a return that we're not expecting. And it's going to flip the momentum of the game on us. And it's going to be hard for us to come back and overcome that. I think Seattle wins if the special teams unit can do their job. I'm not saying they have to be an all-star special teams unit, but don't give up any botched, plays in that. Jason Myers hits his kicks when they come open. That's all we've got. I think that accompanied with our offense and dominating the trenches, it's down to trenches and special teams for this game for Seattle to win.
And I want to, before we get to you, Brandon, just want to lean into your coaching background here a little bit, Bryce, with this comment from Sean. I hope our defense can finally stop those middle seam routes. Anytime they've played the Rams or the Niners, they really have struggled with those digs, that middle of the field. Stafford destroyed us with that in the opener last year. And even last year, even with the improvement we saw to that defense first year under Mike McDonald, their one Achilles heel where they ranked pretty low was play action defense against play action passes. Do you think they're set up better now to be able to maybe take that away?
I think Nick Emenwari could be the answer in some respects to that because of his athletic ability to run with tight ends in the middle of the field. Now, the key with this, though, and Brandon can say his piece on it for me, they have to stop the run, and they have to get a lead, and they have to force the Niners or teams into more of an ability not to run the ball and kind of give up on it. That gets them out of the play action. That gets you into your linebackers being actually get to their drops quicker and make those windows that much more difficult to throw into. If you don't, and you get the play action issues, as we saw in that first matchup with San Francisco last year, George Kittle just killed us on it. So I think Nick Emenwari is the key in that, and I think the ability of this defensive front to stop the run with DeMarcus Lawrence, Byron Murphy, Leo, Jaron Reed, like those are going to be key aspects in that.
Brandon, how do you feel about week 1?
Yeah, I feel really good about week 1. I might feel the best so far of us guys on this in my outlook. Not that we're going to dominate the
just
matchup.
Wait.
Yeah, well, okay. Because I'm feeling pretty fine. I got my chest out. I got my tail feathers. So I think his points about Emenwari helping out, first off, just go first to that point before the game itself, is certainly going to be beneficial. I've got a working theory this year. You heard Rick Bullen talking to Sherman on his podcast about the fact that he let out a little tidbit, little tiny little bit. I'm pressing more than I ever have before.
Mm-hmm.
And when you run press coverage, you tend to run press coverage off the back of man on that. Press to man. You can run it to zone. You can run to a trail off cover 2. You can do a variety of things. But what you're maybe doing here with Emenwari is moving him into the slot, which would then bump Witherspoon to the outside. You then have Woolen to the outside. Woolen is at his best, and the stats prove this, when he's in man coverage situations. You could say with his length and size, he's at his best being a press cover corner to combo that up with. Witherspoon, with the best stuff he did at Illinois when he was coming out, was as an outside corner in press man situations. One of the ways you can disrupt these routes, and one of the ways we have not been able to disrupt these routes with the Niners prior, is you allow free releases off the line of scrimmage. You're not disrupting the timing of the routes to throw those kind of plays off. You run press, you run stack boxes on the front side with Brock, and you give him a lot of hands in his face that he's got to see, and hands up here in passing lanes now on those shorter throws. You can eliminate some of this seam stuff and try to force them a little bit more to getting outside the numbers on their throws, or try to hit the 9 routes if they think they've got one-on-one on the outside, which we all know Brock Purdy, that's not his game. When it comes down to this game, all the things that Mookie spoke about, the injury concerns, this is a big thing. It's no small part. Well, they're just walking in with their share. We're walking in with our share. Your wide receiver room for the Niners has been decimated. His point about Brock Purdy playing better last year with less of a supporting cast is a right one, but you know who he had? Juwan Jennings. You know who was the safety blanket for him last year? Juwan Jennings. You know he don't got from probably week 1 now, Juwan Jennings. And Ricky Pearsall showed a little bit at the end of last year, but even the most ardent Niner will tell you that that's a slot wide receiver. You put him on the outside, he's getting pressed to death. You put him on the outside, he's not going to separate. So he's going to be in this little kind of box, but they're going to try to force him to the outside where they play us probably. Why? Because they have so many good receivers and just he's the best of no, because they don't have anybody to call upon. Sky Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, these are literally going to be probably receivers taking up a lot of snaps in that football game. You're going to be able to concentrate assets, like I'm talking about, stack boxes, simulated pressures. That one nice thing about that as well, you reduce down those natural gaps that occur when you run those 4-man fronts. You tighten things up on the Niners now. You can put a 5th guy down the line of scrimmage, and now that outside zone run, which is counting on 4 bodies moving laterally, has 5 bodies moving laterally in tandem, and that's a lot harder now to find that edge. You're a lot easier now to set that edge and reroute that ball carrier back inside. So this is a working theory. I'd love to hear if you guys agree, if maybe they could go down this road. I'd love to see it. That's why I've said he's kind of maybe channeling his inner buddy Ryan, because in addition to all these points, this is the origin of this Ryan defense. Press man coverage corner on the outside, bare fronts, stack boxes. Everybody knows the bare front. That's the literal, run those tighter 3-4 splits, put a lot of guys up in the line of scrimmage. So I wonder, I know McDonald's done a lot of off coverage and zone centric stuff in his history. I'm kind of wondering if he's going to kind of revert a little bit to the origin story here a bit on this defense this upcoming season. So all of that in tandem, along with the fact on defense, Malik Mustafa, 3 rookies that are going to get starter-like snaps on that defensive line that the Niners are counting on in this football game. That's precarious. We've been down this road with these guys. That doesn't work out too well, not rookie year. And then the last part being even DeMondre Lenore, a really good corner for you. They're going to try to bump him to the outside and have him take a guy he's got to be living in the slot, man. That's his game. They're going to now put him out to the outside, maybe 60, 70% of the snaps. Again, even Niner people that follow the team will tell you, I don't know if that's a good fit for him.
Yeah, Upton Stout, the rookie, looks to be the starter in the nickel. I'm with you. I picked this when the schedule came out. I had us winning week 1, and my thought process at the time was, when you look at how the two sides of the ball matched up, I thought it was kind of strength against strength and weakness against weakness. So the Seahawks were going to have this defense coming back, riding high, lots of continuity, basically the entire group back. You add a couple of pieces to it to face off against a 49ers offense that was probably going to be ready to hit the ground running to start the season with a healthy Christian McCaffrey. That was before, of course, this rash of injuries outside of Ayuk, who we already knew hit their wide receiver core. And then I thought, okay, they're going to be so young on defense, right? They're counting so much on Robert Saleh being able to sprinkle some pixie dust on those guys and get them to play right away, especially up front. They're so young. We've seen in the past a long history of seeing young defensive linemen taking a while to develop. And so now you're trying to push a bunch of those guys together and get them ready to go, outside of also missing Hufanga and Greenlaw and Ward, the other guys you mentioned, against our offense that might have some growing pains coming out of the gate because of all the changes there. But now that I've seen this team and I've seen this offense come together the way it did, and if you think about growing pains out of the gate, I mean, New Orleans didn't have them last year, right? They kind of got out of the gate pretty good fashion those first couple of weeks. I just think, man, does Vegas still have us as the dog? Like, I don't really understand it. To me, I think we're in great position to come out. That I think I've been saying this for weeks now. I think that stadium's going to be as electric as we've seen it in years. I don't think people are selling their tickets. You can tell by the prices that you're seeing online right now. You could feel a different energy at the preseason games in that crowd. They're doing 110 decibels with 2/3 of the stadium full. I think Mike McDonald's comment here on the screen, I go back to comments he made early in the offseason about how he's excited to open his entire playbook this year and run some stuff he didn't get to play last year or didn't get to run last year. I think there's going to be some hell unleashed here week one, and I think it's going to be a really important performance for the Seahawks, and I've got them winning this game, and I've got them winning it in such a way. I don't predict scores or blowouts anyway.
Well, Christian, come on.
I think
let's go.
They're going to win.
Take it there, Dan.
It'll be 2 scores.
Bring it to the harbor, brother.
They're going to win by 2 scores. I think they're going to get a lead. To Bryce's point earlier, I think they're going to get a lead. They're going to control the football a little bit more. They're going to be able to sustain some drives, which has been an issue the last few years against the Niners. We get down quick, and then we got to throw the ball over the yard. I think we're going to play the kind of football that Mike McDonald wants to play and is going to game plan for, and I really like this matchup week one. I can't
one little quick addition to your point on this, just to get you guys just put this in perspective, all the things you guys talked about on this in addition to this, and what Vegas is telling us right now with them coming into our house week one, with them limping in like they are. The Niners have $100 million of dead money on their cap. They took a tangible step backwards this year to clear the books. Absolutely, they did. No team in the league's got more dead money. They're also sitting on about $43 million of cap space. So Vegas is saying that this team limping in with all their injuries can blow $140 million off their books that they don't put to use, and they're still better than you. Yeah, that's almost half the cap. It's on a $279 million cap. You've got 140 basically blown in the wind, blowing in the wind.
And the other thing about the Niners, they've always had an edge to them, right? They've always had that aura. They come in here believing they're the best team. Shanahan's comments from a week ago about what he expects this year, and
he's hedging.
He talked about baby steps, and I just want to see progress, and I want to see that we're headed in the right direction. I don't know. I just don't. It's not going to feel like the same 49er team coming in here to me.
No, and
$100 million ain't something. Sorry,
somebody made a point about turnovers and a late turnover by the Seahawks secondary. Well, turnovers have killed Seattle against San Francisco. In the 3 seasons, these from 22. So I'm going to go the whole of the Geno era. I know this is not Geno's fault, so please don't even try that in the chat, or if you read this, after we go off air. But Seahawks, 14 turnovers in those 7 games, because it's 2-2-2, and then the playoff game. 49ers, 4 turnovers, and all 4 of those turnovers came in 3 games. So there are 4 other games where they were totally clean. Seattle has had a turnover in every game that they played against San Francisco over the last 3 seasons. And it's just been, at inopportune times, whether it is, I got to bring up Geno, a late interception in last year's San Francisco home game, or the DJ Dallas fumble on Thanksgiving night, which made sure that there was going to be no chance of any comeback. So, and part of that is they've been trailing so often. And if they're trailing the 49ers, and the 49ers are at their best, Purdy's not going to throw it a lot, or if he is going to throw it, it's going to be play action, easy plays, no chance of an interception. They can march right up and down the field. Seahawks are constantly having to pass the ball and put the ball in harm's way. If you play with the lead, that's the chance for this defense, and I'm focusing on the defense because they're the ones who are not forcing anything these last few years. They can pin their ears back. Their tails can be as high up as Brandon's cat can be. So, if they see a mouse. But pin their ears back, try and get to Purdy. They were doing some things. I think the seeds were planted as far as maybe as far as potentially solving this 49ers offense. And I know they were undermanned in that game. But in the win over San Francisco last year, Purdy was not comfortable throwing to anybody but Jawan Jennings. But also they held McCaffrey pretty well. I don't think he had 2 runs longer than 9 yards. So it was a grind for them to get to 17 points. And now you got a full off season. You've kept everybody of importance. And now you're adding Nick Emanwari, who is going to take his lumps. I am sure of that. I'm sure Shanahan's going to catch him on something. But if Emanwari can have one of those splash wow plays of why the Seahawks traded up to get him, then that's a real game changer right there. So if they can build a lead and make Purdy have to throw constantly, take away that running game threat, take away the play action that the Seahawks have struggled with so much, and it's pure drop back, those are the chances. You want to see Spoon get some interceptions or chances to break up passes? That's your opportunity. You play with leads, better chance for you to become more opportunistic with your turnovers.
I'm going to make a bold statement. Okay, I was going to make one bold statement to kind of go with Dan's 2-score victory.
I'll let you combo this because I want to go around one last time and get everyone's win total projection to tie a bow on this. And Bryce, I know what yours is, and it goes right along with the way you were about to start the statement you were about to make.
So my bold take for the game, Seattle will have over 200 yards on the ground on the Niners. They are going to run over them.
Let's go.
My projection for win total 13-4.
Oh, hell yeah. 13 wins. Okay,
13
Bryce.
wins. That's where I'm going with this
like
team
that.
this year.
How about you, Brandon?
Well, Bryce got me thinking, maybe rethinking myself over here. I'll go with 11. I'm going to go with 11 wins and try to stay static. I do see there being the upside to 13 wins here really easily within their grip. I just did a show today about the schedule. And, when this schedule was initially released this year, this offseason, went, wow, that's one of the easier schedules you've had in recent years. And then it looks even easier now with a lot of things that have broken in our favor with some of the opponents on deck, some guys that are going to be out for the season or look week, or like the Niner opponents this week with where they're walking in this game. So I do find myself with it arrow rising on that 11 wins, like it's with a bullet, so to speak, on that. But I see at least 11 wins. I think that this team has got too easy of a schedule and everything in the way that it's trending and vibing throughout training camp, from the lack of really a lot of injuries piling up to everybody getting the buy-in, the full participation at OTAs, the seamless nature by which Kubiak has fit himself in here and seems to have taken this really far forward before you even got into games, and now you can feel that. It just tells me that this is going to be a successful season.
Mookie?
I have been, ever since the schedule came out, and Bryce and I think this was one of our Pulse segments way back when, I projected 11 wins for the Seahawks, and I'm staying there, but with one buffer. Like, I think their upper limits for the regular season only is 12, fittingly. I think their floor, assuming no super serious injuries that really lower the floor, is somewhere 6 or 7 wins where, okay, this O-line improvement was a bit of a mirage and the defense is actually not as good as we thought. Or guys like Kupp and Lawrence, as spry as they've looked in camp or preseason, start to wear down. And we see why they were let go by their teams that are on the decline. But I think everybody at their best, and there are going to be injuries. I guarantee you the Seahawks are going to have a bad loss in their schedule this year because it happens to even the best teams. I mean, Kansas City cheated death last year, but they were very close to losing to Carolina and losing to some other teams that they should have comfortably beaten. But for the Seahawks, I think that they are well positioned to make a run at the NFC West title. And it's because they don't have as many health questions as the Rams and 49ers. Like I said earlier, Rams, it's really Stafford. The 49ers, it's both sides of the ball. Arizona, I think people are always bullish on Arizona because they just love Kyler Murray. And I think Kyler Murray is a good quarterback, but I don't think he's great. The defense I'm worried about. I think Arizona's defense could be legit this year. I know LJ Collier jokes, but getting Josh Sweat, I know Nolan's not going to be playing, but they've got some guys there that could make things tricky for everybody in that division. But on paper, I think Seattle could be the most balanced team, as in potential above average offense and a top 10 defense. The Rams didn't have a great defense last year. I think people just forgot it because they love Verse and some of the young talent, but they could improve, but I don't think that they'll be a top 10 defense. And then the Rams offense is highly dependent on Stafford. So I'm going with 11 wins. I think they're going to finally get some wins against some teams that previously they would not have beaten. In other words, start beating some teams that would make us believe they could be a playoff contender, but they could also be in for some traps like Jacksonville. I think that could be a loss because I think Jacksonville won't be a joke this year. And it's also going to be one of those 10 a.m. games in humid Florida. I think Carolina could even be a tough. Yes,
on my birthday, by the way. They can't lose that game. It's on my birthday, for crying out loud.
I had to do it, Mookie. I had to do it. You said Jacksonville.
Unfortunately, they played on my birthday a couple years ago, and they lost 37-3 to Baltimore. So, and they lost that awful Washington game the first weekend I moved out here to Oregon, same day on my birthday. So,
but they found themselves a head coach that day, Mookie. They found themselves a head coach that day. So,
little did we know.
So
but
I
think Tampa Bay could also be a trickier game. But what I want to see the most, no 3-6, no 3-5 at home. They have to be above 500 at home this year. No ifs, ands, or buts. I can handle road regression if it means that this home, days that they've been in, this malaise at home the last few years comes to an end.
Yeah, probably not going to go and only lose one game on the road though this year, so that'll equal out a little bit. I'm going to hedge just slightly. When the schedule came out, I did my schedule prediction. I had them at 11-6. I'm going to stick with that for now. But to Brandon's point, we know more about these teams now. It's a much clearer picture. This weekend, I am going to do a new and improved schedule prediction. And I feel better about this team's ceiling now after getting to know them a little bit better. So I'm going to just, if that's a little hint about which way I might be leaning on that one. To wrap it up, Mookie, let's go around one more time. Let everybody know where you can find your content and what you are working on currently, what you have coming up.
All right. Well, this was a great opening Seahawks Syndicate for us, and we worked out the audio issues, and we'll be more comfortable as we do this in the months ahead. But at Mookie Alexander on Twitter, and I also run the Field Goals account on Twitter and at Blue Sky, but I'm much more active on Twitter because it's just easier to use right now. All my work is either on fieldgoals.com or at sbnation.com because I do write national NFL columns for them, and hopefully I can cover the World Track and Field Championships for them in Tokyo remotely, of course, in a couple weeks' time. But one thing that I am working on is a little giveaway. And no, it's not from my closet because I do have a throwback Seahawks starter homage jacket that is my favorite thing to wear, but can't really wear it right now when it's 90 degrees. But there is a giveaway of sorts. So be sure to go to Field Goals over the next couple of days. I'll have contest details. It is going to be centered around a prediction or predictions because there'll be tiebreakers for that San Francisco 49ers game. So it's a thing we've done the last couple of years. Be on the lookout for that in a few days. That's going to be one heck of a battle because the participation rate is very high.
Bryce.
Yeah. So obviously I have a new podcast, The Hawk's Eye. So anyone that hasn't already, come on over, subscribe to it. I'm no longer affiliated with the Hawk Zone Rundown. Ryan's over there doing his own thing, and I'm doing my own thing. So, come on over, subscribe. I'm going to have a episode with Jeff Simmons appearing tomorrow. I also will be on with Bill Alstead and Keith Myers of Seahawks Playbook podcast tomorrow. I have Rob Staten coming on Saturday. I'm busy, man. I'm fully packed up with guests. And then, looking forward to doing the Syndicate show every end of the month on a Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll get more comfortable with this, like Mookie's point. And all my stuff, guys, that you want to see and stuff, you'll also be able to find it over on Field Goals, as the show is loosely affiliated with that. So that's basically kind of what's going on with me.
Mr. Kane.
You can find me on the Hawks Nest here at YouTube or at Seahawks Nester on X. I'm kind of somewhat active over there. Depends on the day you catch me, but you catch me either way on those.
Nice. And just a reminder again, last Wednesday of every month, so we'll be 4-0 the next time we talk, right, guys?
Yeah, we will.
And it will be able to recap the month that was, look ahead to the month coming up, sort of break the season into quarters, which will be nice. If there's anything huge that happens and we can all get together, we'll try to react to it. I'm thinking specifically maybe trade deadline, something like that, if it should come along. If Micah Parsons becomes a Seahawk at some point, we'll probably see if the four of us can get together all at the same time. But thanks to all of you. We've got almost 1,300 in here at the moment. That's kind of where it peaked. So cool. We've had a lot of fun. This all came together over the course of, the last couple of years, really, in some cases, but the last 3 or 4 months, a lot of talking, planning ahead. We knew we were all going to be at training camp together. We ended up getting together and doing the live shows, of course, from Fast Fashion Brewery and going out to dinner at Aqua on Saturday night. And we just thought, you know what, let's make this a thing. So appreciate all of you for tuning in. This will always be on all of our channels. And so we'll kind of rotate who the host is. And so just keep your eye out for that. I'm going to be just a little programming reminder. I'm going to be driving for a few days next week, and so I'll be off air, if you will, from Labor Day until about Thursday. But before then, a couple things coming up. Really excited about this. I get to talk about some fantasy football. Johnny Tuma from Roto Underworld is got to talk to him today, do a little fantasy preview outlook for the Seahawks, which was pretty intriguing. And then Brady Henderson's going to be joining me tomorrow, of course, Seahawks beat reporter for ESPN and their pool manager. And so stay tuned for that. We're not going to have any music to take you out with today because got to work out some copyright issues. Don't want to get anybody in trouble here. But guys, unless anyone has any last words, we give a go Hawks, and we'll leave the folks with this beautiful piece of artwork. Yes, Bryce.
I was going to say, I think you need to give me a shout out. They put in quite a generous super chat.
It's me. Oh, I thought you. I'm going to give you a shout
I
out. Hey, Bryce.
Not me.
Woo!
Yeah, not me. I wish it was me.
Let's go,
me.
Me says 4 of my favorites. Great first show, gentlemen. Getting geeked for the start of the season. Go Hawks. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate that.
Gotcha.
That is fantastic. Thank you. Glad I didn't miss
Thank you,
that.
me.
Thank you, Bryce. Let's just go
Awesome as
this so
always.
everybody can see our ugly
Thanks,
mugs
mate.
before we go. All right, that's going to do it, you guys. We'll see you next time. Forever and always go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
We'll see you in a month.